Book 7, Heaven and Earth Turned Upside Down, Chapter 14, The City of Hesse. Doering Coward was rendered momentarily speechless by Linley's question. Linley, I must tell you, if a weapon has just a little bit of adamantine alloyed into it, the weapon's durability will increase to a very high level. If a weapon were to be totally made out of adamantine, even if you gave it to a saint-level combatant and let him try to break it, he wouldn't be able to scratch it, no matter how long he tried. Doering Coward was very resigned. Linley clearly didn't fully appreciate how valuable adamantine was. Then, Grandpa Doering, can I use this adamantine to forge a heavy sword? After listening to Doering Coward previously explain the benefits to using heavy weapons, Linley wanted to acquire a heavy sword of his own. Originally, Linley was planning to spend some money and buy a good one. But now that he had this chunk of adamantine, naturally he had to put it to good use. Right now, Linley didn't lack for money. Forge a heavy sword with adamantine? A heavy sword is rather large, and will most likely need this chunk of adamantine to be mixed with some other metals. But of course, I don't know anything about blacksmithing myself. However, I have heard that forging weapons out of adamantine is extremely difficult. Adamantine is extremely tough. Most master weaponsmiths are not capable of melting and reforging it. Doering Coward chuckled. Linley nodded to himself. Adamantine was a material which even deity-level combatants supposedly would find tough to break. But since it was possible for adamantine to be forged into a weapon, naturally there had to be a special technique for it as well. Only, the technique was probably too difficult. Got it? Linley nodded. Linley and Second Prince Shak continued speeding northwards, and the farther north they went, the sparser the magical beasts became. After traveling another 300 or 400 kilometers without a single magical beast appearing, they reached an area where the local cities and towns hadn't had any people die. But these villages and towns were very sparsely populated. Most likely, people were afraid of the danger and had moved northwards as well. Haha, good, it seems the kingdom of Hesse hasn't fallen. Shak laughed loudly. It's been quite a few days. Finally we can rest. Shak looked at Linley. Seated on his horse, Linley seemed as solid and unmovable as an old oak, not wavering in the slightest, seeming very stable. His face was calm, and he had been silent, giving him a reliable, taciturn aura. Towards Linley, Shak had always felt a hint of dread. Although he was a few years older than Linley, he always respectfully addressed Linley as Master Linley. Master Linley, look. That's a military camp up ahead. Shak and Linley were riding side by side. Linley nodded. The Radiant Church had clearly decided to set up a line of defense here at the borders of the Kingdom of Hesse. Seeing those countless military camps lining the border, one could tell how many soldiers had been deployed here. 2 kingdoms and 5 duchies lost. That's about a third of the territory of the Holy Union. I expect the Radiant Church isn't willing to retreat any further. Linley chuckled. Linley and the knights made their way through the guarded pass, and were quickly allowed in. This guarded pass was to defend against magical beasts. Naturally, no humans would be denied entry. Second Prince, shall we rest here? Linley seemed very tranquil. The city of Hesse is one of the agreed-upon places that my royal father and I settled upon. We still have around 300 kilometers before arriving at Hesse city. If we hurry, we should be able to reach there by nightfall today. Shak said unguardedly. Hesse city. Linley memorized this name. Clady. Hesse city shall be where you die. They continued their journey. Linley, Shak, and the 30 mounted knights kicked up a trail of dust in their wake. By the time Linley and Shak saw the city of Hesse, the sun was just setting, casting its red glow upon the earth. Hesse city, the capital of the Kingdom of Hesse. It's only slightly smaller than Fenley city. Seeing the silhouettes of the enormous city walls, Linley couldn't help but be awed. How much manpower had it taken to erect such giant walls? Arriving at the gate to Hesse City, Linley and his squad found their way barred. Dismount. A gate guard of Hesse City ordered in a loud voice. Why should we dismount? Shaq shouted back angrily. The gate guard saw that Shaq's group was definitely an extraordinary one, and thus answered the question. His Highness has ordered that no horses may be ridden within the boundaries of Hesse City. Everyone, right now Hesse City is overflowing with people. There's simply not enough space to ride horses. It's best if you all dismount. Let's dismount. Linley smiled at Shaq. Shaq nodded. Linley and Shaq could both imagine that many people had fled here from the 2 ruined kingdoms and the 6 destroyed duchies. Most likely many of the people living near Hesse City had fled here as well. Those 2 kingdoms and 6 duchies possessed a combined population of hundreds of millions. Even if 90% had died, millions would have survived. And of course, there had been no magical beast sightings within hundreds of kilometers of the kingdom of Hesse, so virtually all of the people who lived in that area had survived. So many people. Stepping into Hesse City, Linley and Shaq and the knights were all shocked. Hesse City normally could only accommodate at most 1 million people. But by Linley's calculations, right now there were at least several million people within the city, because every single street was clogged. Even in the city of Fenley, Linley had never seen anything like this. Go find a hotel first, then come back here to pick me up. Shaq immediately ordered his men to go reserve a hotel suite. Lord Linley, let's go eat dinner first. Shaq said with a laugh, and of course Linley wouldn't refuse. Shaq immediately led Linley and the others to a nearby restaurant. The bottom floor of this restaurant was full, but there were still dining rooms available in the upper levels. 3 rooms. Shaq said magnanimously. But when they sat down and Shaq saw the prices on the menu, he was somewhat flabbergasted. Shaq grabbed the nearest waiter and shouted angrily, "Do you take me for an idiot? With prices like this, a table of dishes would cost several thousand gold coins. You are trying to cheat me." Although this restaurant was a high-class one, Shaq, as a prince, had naturally been to many high-class restaurants. For a restaurant of this class, 100 gold coins a table was generally more than enough. "Milord, if you don't wish to eat, you can leave." The waiter seemed very confident. Right now, Hesse City is filled to the brim with people. Including countless nobles who fled here with their valuables. All of them demand high-quality service and are willing to pay for it. Shaq was instantly stunned by these words. Right. The people who had managed to flee from the 2 kingdoms and the 3 duchies most likely all belonged to powerful clans or were powerful combatants themselves. Those powerful clans naturally wouldn't penny pinch. Humph. Shaq snorted, but still placed his orders in the end. After Shaq and Linley had finished eating their meals. "Your Highness, Second Prince." The people who had gone looking for a hotel came back. "And? Have you found a place?" Shaq asked. That guard shook his head. "All of the rooms in the major hotels have been booked. Although we only went to 5 large hotels, we could already tell this wouldn't work. There were too many people trying to make reservations. Your Highness, we arrived at Hesse City too late. The members of the clans belonging to the 5 duchies and the kingdom of Hanmu arrived much faster than us." Shaq nodded. "Sit and eat first." Shaq turned to look at another guard, one with short jade hair. "Are you full yet? If you are, help me find a manor and buy it. I expect the prices here within Hesse City will be quite high, but no matter how pricey it is, buy it. Remember, though, don't buy something which is too gaudy and too large. This manor will only be a temporary lodging place for myself and my royal father." "Yes, Your Highness." The guard acknowledged, and then left to find a manor. Linley quietly drank his wine, watching everything. A manor? I wonder which manor it will be. When Clady comes, most likely he will head to that manor as well. By finding out the place where Clady was going to stay, all he would need to do was lie in wait. When the opportunity came, he would send Clady to his death. Hess City. A very ordinary manor on Coilin Road. Under normal conditions, a manor in Hess City like this, which was not located in the city center, would generally be worth 200,000 or 300,000 gold coins. But Prince Shak had to pay 1,000,000 gold coins just to buy it. A large number of nobles and magnates had entered Hess City, causing inflation to skyrocket. That night, Linley also stayed in this manor for now. That Clady, after he comes, should be residing in one of these 2 or 3 rooms. Linley was walking in the middle of the manor, carefully inspecting its internal layout. He was making preparations for killing Clady in the future. The night wind was cool and refreshing, but Linley ignored it, only paying attention to the location and layout of every part of this manor. "Lord Linley, why haven't you rested yet?" that enchanting consort said to Linley in a soft voice, standing in the doorway to her room. "Found being in my room to be too stuffy. Thought I'd get some fresh air." Linley replied casually. "I also feel it's rather stuffy." That consort walked out of her room towards Linley. Her coquettish gaze only made Linley feel apprehensive, and he immediately said, "Then royal consort, you should get some air. I'll go back to my room and get some rest now." After he spoke, Linley immediately left. Watching Linley leave, the consort couldn't help but let out a little humph of displeasure. The next morning. "Second prince, royal consort, princess. I have some things to take care of, so I'll leave now." Linley bid his farewells. "Lord Linley, why are you in such a rush to leave? Wait for my royal father to come back first, then decide." Shak immediately tried to convince him to stay. Linley laughed coldly inside. "Wait for your royal father? If Clady saw that I was living here, I probably would have to openly attack and kill him. The chance of killing him openly is lower than assassinating him." Linley had already had enough setbacks. This time, Linley wanted to be absolutely certain of success. "This time, I'll have to endure and be patient. I'll wait for the moment when Clady and Kaiser aren't together. When Clady is alone, I'll kill him. That will definitely be successful." Linley knew that so long as Kaiser was there, he wouldn't be able to kill Clady quickly. But as long as Kaiser was not present, he definitely would succeed. "Then where are you going, Lord Linley?" Shak asked. "I plan to leave Hess City and continue north. As for where exactly, I'm not yet sure." Linley replied. "All right. Second prince, royal consort, princess. I bid you farewell." Bowing slightly, Linley led Bibi away from the manor. That very night, Linley moved into a small courtyard on the same street as Shak's manor. The manor which Shak had bought took up a large amount of space, enough to very comfortably fit 30 people. But the house which Linley bought was very small, only enough for 3 or 4 people. This little courtyard had still cost Linley 50,000 gold coins. In normal times, a few thousand coins would have been enough. Have you seen anyone new enter the manor?" Linley was seated at his dinner table as he asked these 2 men. "No." Linley had casually picked these 2 men up from the streets for his employ. Right now, in Hess City, there were many commoners as well as nobles. After fleeing here, those commoners had no food to eat and place to live. All they could do was beg or do manual labor. Thus, it was easy for Linley to find people to work for him. A salary of 2 gold coins each day, with food and board included, was an opportunity which any of these impoverished refugees would have fought for. Linley saw that these 2 men seemed the reliable sort, and so had chosen them. At night, you can sleep, but by day, keep a close watch. As long as any strangers enter the manor, especially in large numbers, you have to inform me. Pay special attention to a man who has only one hand. Linley repeated his instructions. There was no need to keep a watch at night, because the gates to Hesse City were barred shut at night. And Linley was confident that with 2 people watching during the day, as long as Clady's men arrived, he would definitely find out. Shack and his people believed that Linley had really left the city, but in reality, Linley continued his watch from a courtyard very near them. "Clady, I'll just keep waiting here for as long as it takes. Let's see how long it takes you to get here." Linley's gaze was cold. Seeing the look on Linley's face, those 2 brothers shuddered. "Go," Linley ordered. "Yes, milord." Book 7, Heaven and Earth Turned Upside Down, Chapter 15, The Clan of the Violet Flame Warriors. A sky-blue magus robe and a magi staff in hand. This was how Linley was dressed now as he walked on the streets. On this outing, Bibi had stayed behind in the little courtyard on Cayon Road. Linley's instructions were for Bibi to instantly tell him once Clady appeared. Given the sole link between Linley and Bibi, no matter how far apart they were, they would be able to sense each other's thoughts. Today, Linley had made this outing for the sake of his heavy sword. HRM. Linley noticed a weapons shop nearby and immediately went inside. The weapons shop's business was quite average. There were only 2 customers inside inspecting the various weapons. Linley went straight to the counter and asked calmly, "In Hesse City, who is the best weaponsmith around?" The store clerk glanced at Linley. Realizing he was a magus, the shopkeeper immediately said courteously, "Milord Magus, the master blacksmith of our shop possesses very high skills. There's no weapon that he cannot forge. My question was, in Hesse City, who is the best blacksmith around?" Linley's face turned cold. "If your so-called master blacksmith is unable to produce the weapon I need, don't blame me when I wreck your shop." The store clerk was frightened by Linley's words. Previously, he had wanted to try and win a customer, but now he no longer dared to make any rash claims. "Milord Magus, the #1 blacksmith of Hesse City resides in West Hesse City. His name is Master Corby Kerby, and his weapons shop is quite close to the Radiant Temple." Corby. Linley memorized this name. He immediately left. "But Milord Magus," that store clerk said in a quiet voice. HRM. Linley turned his head to look at the clerk, curious what he had to say. The store clerk said respectfully, "Milord Magus, if you want a good magi staff, you should go to a magic weapons store. These weapons are all meant for warriors to choose from." In the eyes of the store clerk, it was very strange indeed for a magus to not only want a weapon, but to want one made by a master blacksmith. The weapon of a magus was his magi staff. And in order to produce a magi staff, one needed high skills in alchemy. Linley's lips curved upwards in a smile, and he left the weapons store. Half an hour later, Linley arrived near the Radiant Temple in the west part of the city. Based on Linley's investigations, the Holy Emperor of the Radiant Church and the other saint-level combatants hadn't arrived in Hesse City yet. Supposedly, only a single cardinal had arrived here, but to better assist the ruler of the Kingdom of Hesse, he had taken residence along with the soldiers at the border. As for where that group of saint-level combatants of the Radiant Church had gone, no one knew. "I really hope that king of the mountain range of magical beasts killed a few of those saint-levels," Linley secretly said to himself. The Holy Emperor Haydn's had used the divine baptism against Linley. Although Linley didn't know what exactly it had been meant to do, he knew that the divine power of it had tried to merge into his very soul. His soul. This was the most important core of a person. Linley was certain that Haydn's had been up to no good. "This is the weapons store of the so-called #1 blacksmith in Hesse City." Linley glanced at the weapons store. The store was tens of meters long, and on each side of the door there were 2 powerfully built warriors in beautifully wrought armor standing guard, weapons in hand. This weapons store did indeed seem quite impressive. Clearly, it was much better than the store which Linley had gone into just a while earlier. Entering the weapons store, Linley saw that the attendant was a beautiful young woman. The woman's eyes lit up when she saw how Linley was dressed. And she courteously said, "My Lord Magus, what sort of weapon do you desire? Come with me. We have all sorts of beautiful court rapiers." Linley chuckled with resignation. It seemed this woman thought that he was nothing more than a magus who wanted a weapon to play around with. "I heard your master Corby is here," Linley said directly to the woman. The attendant nodded. "Right. Master Corby is the head blacksmith here, and he is definitely the #1 blacksmith within the city of Hesse. I've never heard of Master Corby being unable to forge a weapon of any sort." "Oh? Have Master Corby come out? I wish for him to make me a weapon," Linley said immediately. Have Master Corby come out." The attendant laughed awkwardly. "My Lord Magus, Master Corby never comes out to meet with customers. If you wish to meet with Master Corby, you'll have to go find him yourself. And, if you want to meet Master Corby, you need to spend some money, as otherwise, he won't meet with you." Linley had to admit that this man really did know how to put on airs. "Fine. How much money for me to go meet him?" Linley asked directly. "Not much. 50 gold coins," the attendant said. 50 gold coins was nothing to those members of rich clans, but this price was enough for a commoner to survive off of for a year or two. 50. Linley withdrew a sack of gold from his clothes. This sack contained 100 pieces of gold. Linley poured out 50, then instructed, "Lead the way." Linley usually only carried 100 gold coins on him. He had Magi crystal cards on him, after all. If he needed any more, he could go withdraw it. "Yes, my Lord Magus." The attendant was extremely happy. 5 minutes later, guided by the attendant, Linley arrived at a very plain-looking residence. The guard to the residence clearly was familiar with the attendant, and let them in immediately. When Linley saw Master Corby, the man was reclining on a chair while sipping a cup of tea. This Corby's hair was totally white, but the powerful muscles bulging from his body showed that he was still a powerful warrior. Most weaponsmiths were extremely powerful warriors. "Master Corby, this Lord Magus wishes to meet with you," the attendant said respectfully. Corby glanced at Linley and laughed. "Youngster, my fees are quite high. If you want me to forge a weapon for you, at the very least it will cost you 10,000 gold coins." Linley could sense this Master Corby's approximate level of power. If he wasn't a warrior of the 7th rank, then he was one of the 8th. "Fine." Linley nodded. "But this weapon will use special materials." "Right. Can the other people here leave?" "Of course." Master Corby nodded at his servants, who immediately left. Master Corby looked at Linley curiously. "Youngster, what special materials do you bring?" "Adamantine," Linley said directly. Previously sitting lazily on his chair, Master Corby suddenly shot to his feet as though thunderstruck. He stared at Linley in amazement. "What did you just say?" "Adamantine. Did I hear you correctly?" Adamantine was a material that appeared only in legends. He, Corby, had been a weaponsmith his entire life, but hadn't seen any. "Right. I intend to use adamantine to forge a weapon. Are you capable of doing so?" Linley looked expectantly at Master Corby. Master Corby hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he sighed and said, "Youngster, I actually do not have the ability to smith adamantine." Hearing these words, Linley couldn't help but feel disappointed. "Youngster, can you show the adamantine to me?" Corby said somewhat awkwardly. Linley could understand the desire of a master blacksmith like Corby to see adamantine with his own eyes. He immediately removed the adamantine chunk from his bag and handed it over to Master Corby. This 1,000-pound chunk of adamantine didn't seem to be heavy at all to Linley. However, When the totally unprepared Master Corby accepted the chunk of adamantine, his hand couldn't help but sink down. It really is heavy. Master Corby recovered and easily lifted it back up. But Corby still glanced at Linley in surprise. For this Linley to be able to hold this heavy chunk of adamantine so easily meant that he was at least a warrior of the 6th rank. Adamantine. Having seen it, I'm satisfied. Corby stared lovingly at the chunk of adamantine, but in the end he returned it to Linley. In truth, Corby did feel a hint of greed and desire for it, but he knew that for Linley to so casually hand it to him meant that Linley wasn't worried at all about being unable to get it back. What's more, Corby also knew that he didn't have the ability to smith this adamantine chunk. Master Corby, do you know who is capable of smithing adamantine? Linley asked. Corby considered for a moment. From what I know, the Radiant Church has specialized master weaponsmiths. The Radiant Church has a long history and it should possess the techniques needed to smith adamantine. I expect that the master weaponsmiths belonging to the 4 great empires and to the cult of shadows should all be in possession of such techniques as well. Linley nodded. Farewell, then. Linley left, somewhat disappointed. Linley knew from the beginning that adamantine wasn't so easily smelted, and so he had made some mental preparations. Departing from this location, he headed back towards his own residence. But halfway back, Linley suddenly heard a familiar voice. "Third bro." Linley immediately turned his head to look. Yale, George, and Reynolds were staring back at him in astonishment. "Boss Yale." "Second bro, fourth bro." Linley immediately ran over excitedly. He didn't expect to be able to meet with his dear brothers again. Under Yale's invitation, Linley decided to go to the Dawson conglomerate's headquarters to have a good meal with his brothers. Within a very secluded manner. Linley, Yale, Reynolds, and George were all happily exchanging stories of recent events. "You want to find a master weaponsmith?" I don't know any either." Yale shook his head. Reynolds said questioningly, "Third bro, you said adamantine? What is adamantine?" Neither Reynolds, nor Yale, nor George had ever heard of adamantine. Adamantine was simply too rare and too precious. "Linley, we just barely had a chance to meet last time. Only today do I have the opportunity to have a good chat with a genius like you." Monroe Dawson walked in from the main hall, holding his big belly and chuckling. "Hey, did you just say adamantine?" Linley nodded. "Lord Chairman, I managed to acquire some adamantine and plan to use it to forge a weapon. But I'm not able to find a master weaponsmith capable of forging it." "Oh. What sort of a person was Monroe Dawson? How could he not know what adamantine was? You actually address me as chairman? You and Yale are like brothers. Just call me uncle. You say you need to find a master weaponsmith who can smelt adamantine? I happen to know one." Linley actually didn't feel too excited upon hearing this. Because even if Monroe Dawson knew a person, that person most likely wasn't in the city of Hesse. "Uncle Monroe, who is that master weaponsmith?" Linley asked. Monroe Dawson grinned. "That master weaponsmith is known as Master Vincente Valentini, the leader of the Hyde clan." "Vincente?" Linley was a bit curious. Suddenly, Linley started. "Uncle Dawson, what clan did you just say he belonged to?" "The Hyde clan." Monroe Dawson replied with a chortle. Linley had totally memorized that book he had read back in his clan's manor, which introduced the 4 supreme warriors. One piece of information included within was the clan names of the 4 supreme warriors. The Violet Flame Warriors clan was the Hyde clan. However, there was more than one clan named Hyde, and thus this Hyde clan wasn't necessarily the clan of the Violet Flame Warriors. "You thought of them? Haha. Right. This Hyde clan is just like your Barrack clan. They are a clan of supreme warriors. The Hyde clan lived within a small city in the Holy Union's kingdom of Hanmua. After this catastrophe, they fled here to Hess City. Monroe Dawson said with a laugh. They are here in Hess City. Linley was surprised. And they are living right next to my manor. I personally arranged for them to be put there. Monroe Dawson continued. Linley stared at Monroe Dawson in astonishment. Actually, Monroe Dawson knew several people who were capable of smelting adamantine. The master weaponsmith of the Dawson conglomerate was capable of smelting adamantine as well. But none of those other people whom Monroe Dawson knew were currently in Hess City. Thus, Monroe Dawson only mentioned this one person. Book 7, Heaven and Earth Turned Upside Down, Chapter 16, The Furnace. Linley was in a dire need of a good weapon, and so Monroe Dawson decided to immediately take Linley to Master Vincente. Monroe Dawson, Linley, Yale, George, and Reynolds all went in a group to a dwelling not too far away. Lord Chairman. The guard at the entrance immediately bowed respectfully upon seeing Monroe Dawson. The servants and guards of the Hyde clan had been personally arranged for by Monroe Dawson. They all belonged to the Dawson conglomerate to begin with. Lord Dawson has arrived. A middle-aged man who had been quietly lying in rest in the front courtyard instantly scrambled to his feet and walked over. His face filled with gratitude, he said, Lord Dawson, if you want to see me, all you have to do is send someone for me. I would just come to your place. This Vincente truly did feel grateful towards Monroe Dawson. In this past half year, Monroe Dawson had been extremely friendly and courteous towards his Hyde clan, but hadn't required anything of them. In particular, when they had fled for their lives, if the Dawson conglomerate hadn't assisted them while they were in the kingdom of Hanmua, perhaps many more members of the Hyde clan would have died. Haha, let's talk inside. Monroe Dawson slapped Vincente on the shoulders. All right. Other members of the Hyde clan, such as Vincente's father, and Vincente's two sons all came out. Come, Mr. Vincente, let me make some introductions. Monroe Dawson beamed as he pointed at Linley. The three of you should already know my son, but this one here is that genius magus I have often mentioned to you. He is Linley of the Barrack clan, a master sculptor and a genius magus. Vincente continued. Vincente turned his eyes to Linley. Even Vincente's father and his two children turned to stare at Linley in awe. Linley, I imagine you know about our Hyde clan. There was a very special sentiment visible in Vincente's eyes. Although both the Hyde clan and the Barrack clan had decayed in power over the years, in their heart, they were filled with pride and a certain type of arrogance. The clans of the four supreme warriors had 5,000 years of history. No matter how far they had fallen, this sort of innate pride and arrogance sprung from their hearts. Two descendants of two supreme warrior clans looked at each other, sharing a very special moment. The Violet Flame Warrior clan. Linley said modestly. In the books passed down within our Barrack clan, there are careful descriptions regarding the Hyde clan, one of our fellow supreme warrior clans. Hearing these words, Vincente couldn't help but feel as though he had been given quite a bit of face, and felt all the more well disposed towards Linley. Linley, let me introduce you. This is my eldest son, Yetian Usine Hyde. This is my second son, Trey Tele Hyde. Vincente clearly was very proud of his sons. Linley, my two sons are quite talented as well. But of course, compared to you, they have quite a distance to go. Yetian and Trey only nodded, but from the fierce look in their eyes, they clearly didn't submit to their father's claims that the two brothers were a bit inferior to Linley. Haha, all right, Mr. Vincente. I've come today to ask you for your help. Monroe Dawson said directly. Vincente immediately said magnanimously, Lord Dawson, if you need anything, just tell me. As long as I am capable, I will definitely do my best. In this past half year, the Dawson conglomerate had helped the Hyde clan out in many matters. But the Hyde clan hadn't been able to repay them at all. After all, the Dawson conglomerate hadn't asked them to do anything. The feeling of owing someone wasn't a good one. Monroe Dawson laughed while gesturing at Linley. Linley wants a good weapon. I want to ask you to be the one to forge it for him. Forge a weapon? Vincente looked at Linley. Linley, a weapon for yourself? Yes. Linley nodded. A gratified look was in Vincente's eyes. Nodding, he said, right. We descendants of the four supreme warriors can't be physically puny and weak. We must train as warriors, and naturally we must have a fine weapon. Tell me, what sort of weapon do you desire? Both Vincente, and his two sons, upon hearing that Linley was a magus genius, felt a bit of disdain towards him in their hearts. In their eyes, the four supreme warriors' descendants should be powerful, invincible warriors. Now that Linley was asking them to help him make a weapon, they felt very happy. A heavy sword. Linley said slowly. Mr. Vincente, I am 1.9 meters tall. You decide how long the heavy sword should be. You should know what length would be most suitable to someone of my height. Vincente was a bit surprised. A heavy sword? Not a great sword or a warblade. Great swords and heavy swords were two different types of weapons. A heavy sword. Linley said with certainty. All right. Any other requests? Vincente was the leader of the Hyde clan. The descendants of the Hyde clan weren't just powerful warriors, they were all extremely skilled blacksmiths as well. Linley removed the bag he was carrying. The materials for the heavy sword must include this. From within the bag, Linley withdrew that fist-sized chunk of adamantine ore. Just by looking at it, Vincente couldn't tell that this was adamantine. After all, even Vincente had never seen adamantine before. He immediately asked curiously, what is this ore called? Adamantine. Linley replied directly. Adamantine. Vincente, his father, and his two sons all stared in astonishment at the fist-sized chunk of black rock in Linley's hands. Vincente suppressed the excitement in his heart. Looking at Linley, he said, can you let me take a look? Yes. Vincente carefully accepted the chunk of adamantine. Although he had never seen adamantine before, Vincente knew that adamantine was extremely heavy, and so he had prepared himself for it. Indeed. At least 1,000 pounds. Vincente's eyes shone. Indeed. Adamantine is over 100 times heavier than gold. The legends are true. Vincente suddenly came to his senses, and he stared at Linley in astonishment. Linley, you want to use this entire chunk of adamantine in the forging of your heavy sword? Right. All of it? Linley replied. Vincente shook his head repeatedly. Linley, this adamantine ore is 1,000 pounds by itself. Using adamantine as the base, the other materials you will need to alloy it with will have to be of high quality as well. Given the size of your heavy sword, it will most likely weigh nearly 3,000 pounds. This will be my first time forging such a heavy sword. 3,000 pounds. You want it for yourself? Even most warriors of the 7th rank won't be able to use it freely. Even a warrior of the 8th rank will be slowed down by it, despite being able to wield it with ease. Mr. Vincente, just worry about the forging. Linley laughed. Dragon blood warriors were immensely strong, physically. Comparatively speaking, in terms of battle chi, dragon blood battle chi was a bit weaker. Of the four supreme warriors, the dragon blood warriors and the undying warriors possessed greater strength. The founder of the Barak clan, Barak, was someone who had dared to fight head-on against a 9-headed serpent emperor and win, killing it in the end. A 9-headed serpent emperor was an incredibly large creature, with strength to match. It could be considered one of the most powerful saint-level magical beasts in existence. But Barak still dared to fight it head-on and killed it. From this, people learned how powerful and strong the dragon blood warriors were. Vincente glanced at Linley, then nodded. Within my clan, we do indeed have secret methods for forging adamantine. but it will be hard for me to acquire all of the other rare ingredients right now. Let me handle that, Monroe Dawson said. Vincente nodded. Given the power and influence of the Dawson conglomerate, procuring some ores should be very easy. Vincente looked at Linley. Solemnly, he said, Linley, adamantine weapons are indeed very formidable. If you only use a small amount of adamantine ore in your weapon, I'll still be able to sharpen and put an edge on it. But if you want to use this much adamantine, I'm afraid that at most, I'll be able to make the edges of the sword slightly thinner. But I won't be able to put an edge on it. 1,000-pound chunk of adamantine ore. Vincente had never even heard of such a thing. The sturdiness of the weapon it was used to forge would be incredible. To put an edge on and sharpen such a weapon? Vincente knew his own limits. Unable to put an edge on it. Linley suddenly thought back to the records of his clan. The first Dragon Blood warrior had used a warblade to do battle, but the later Dragon Blood warriors did not. One had even used a massive warhammer, relying purely on weight and power. A 3,000-pound heavy sword would totally be a match for that warhammer of his ancestors. If you can't put an edge on it, so be it. Linley was very confident. Such a heavy sword with such weight would be able to smash magical beasts to death with sheer kinetic force when wielded by the terrifying strength of a Dragon Blood warrior. Good. As long as we have the other ores needed, I can immediately begin the forging for you. A single weapon won't take more than half a day of work, Vincente said confidently. He, Vincente, had forged countless weapons, and he was very confident in the secret forging methods of his clan. Monroe Dawson laughed. Vincente, then can you provide me with your secret recipe for forging adamantine now? Fine. I'll go get it now. Vincente immediately left. The Dawson conglomerate's efficiency level was terrifyingly high. Before nightfall, they had procured a large pile of quality ores. In truth, the secret forging methods of the Hyde clan didn't require any specific ores, as every material had possible replacements as well. But the materials provided by the Dawson conglomerate were the best of the best. That night. The quality of these materials is extremely high, and all of these ores are high-value ores. Staring at the ores, Vincente was so excited that his face had a ruddy glow. Laughing loudly, he said, Linley, with such good materials to work with, I'm afraid that the heavy sword will be slightly heavier than I anticipated. That's fine. Linley laughed. A weapon weighing just a bit over 3,000 pounds could still be easily wielded by most warriors of the 9th rank, much less the astonishingly strong Dragon Blood warriors. All right. Tomorrow morning, I'll begin. Vincent said heroically. That night, Linley didn't go back to his own manor. He chatted mentally with Bibi, who very obediently stayed home and didn't come over. As far as Bibi was concerned, right now his life consisted of eat, sleep, sleep. This was the type of life he liked. Early morning. The sky slowly brightened. Those 3 Hyde clan members, father and 2 sons, were bare-chested as they began the forging process. Vincente was the primary worker, while Etienne and Trey assisted on the sides. The flames spat forth by the bellows were at an incredibly high temperature. Hiss. Vincente Hyde's body began to emit a blue flame, which quickly merged with the flames in the furnace. The color of the flames in the furnace actually changed as well, and those other ores began to slowly liquefy. Only the adamantine ore didn't change at all. Vincente picked up a cup of greenish herbal liquids and poured it directly over the adamantine ore. Hiss. The green liquid actually began to transform the adamantine ore somehow, as it actually slowly began to melt as well. Finally, the general shape of a sword could be seen. Clang. 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 The forge hammer smashed down again and again, the speed of the blows coming at a terrifyingly fast rate. The hammer danced in Vincente's hands. giving everyone present the sense of watching an artistic performance. Clearly, Vincente's hammer strokes had a certain rhythm to it, and the form of the heavy sword began to become more and more clearly defined. Hiss. Vincente's body was constantly emitting that blue flame, keeping the heavy sword under high temperatures at all times. He continued hammering away at it for 3 hours. The heavy sword, which originally had been all sorts of colors, gradually turned into a pitch black color. Vincente was covered in sweat, and his face was turning a bit white. This was perhaps the most tiring forging project he had ever done. "Give me mountain spring water," Vincente shouted loudly. His elder son, Yetian, immediately brought over a nearby barrel of water, then mixed into it a cup with a different, pre-prepared liquid inside. Using the secret liquid ingredients of their clan along with mountain spring water would definitely produce optimal tempering results. Hiss. The heavy sword was placed within the barrel. Watching by the side, Linley and Monroe Dawson's eyes lit up. After being tempered, the heavy sword would more or less be complete. But just at this time, the gloomy, overcast sky suddenly boomed with thunder, catching everyone off guard. Success! Vincente pulled the heavy sword out, his face filled with excitement. He raised it high in the air, laughing loudly. "Ha ha, Linley, success! This is the finest creation I have ever made." Boom! A terrifying sound could be heard as a bolt of blue lightning suddenly forked down, striking directly on top of the heavy sword. Book 7, Heaven and Earth Turned Upside Down, Chapter 17, The Heavy Sword, Bladeless. This naturally generated bolt of lightning slashed down at high speed, and was many times faster than electrical bolts which Thunder Element Magi could produce. Nobody present was able to react in time, and the lightning bolt crashed onto the upraised heavy sword. Ah! Vincente let out a pain-filled scream as his body was suddenly enveloped in a wild blue flame, which even had some silvery white flame mixed within. Thud! The heavy sword fell to the ground. At the same time, Vincente collapsed as well, his entire body twitching, especially his right arm, which had been charred badly enough that the scent of burning flesh could be smelled. Even after collapsing, Vincente's body continued to jerk about, and blood was pouring from his mouth. "Father!" The two brothers Yetian and Trey let out simultaneous cries as they immediately ran forward. "Mr. Vincente!" Both Linley and Monroe Dawson were shocked as well. This natural bolt of lightning had carried an enormous amount of energy. It wasn't unheard of for even powerful combatants to die due to being struck by lightning. All of them ran over, surrounding Vincente, as Monroe Dawson roared out, "Quick, have Mr. Armand Amanda come, quick." Armand was a light-style magus under Monroe Dawson's command who also specialized in medicine. He was extremely skilled at healing people. Yes. Seeing this, the gate guard also was frantic, and he rushed to find the Magus Armand. Magus Armand arrived shortly afterwards. He was an old man with a snowy white beard. Without saying a word, he immediately invoked a light-style spell. The totally burnt and charred right arm of Vincente began to quickly and visibly heal. Soon, all traces of the injury were gone. I'm fine." Vincente managed to force out these words with difficulty. "How are your internals?" Armand asked immediately. A powerful warrior was easily capable of sensing his body's internal condition. This assessment would be more accurate than a magus' external observations. Vincente shook his head. "I'm fine. I just need a little time, and I will be all right. Mr. Armand, there's no further need for you to concern yourself with my father's injuries." Yetian said bluntly as well. These words raised the suspicions of Monroe Dawson, Linley, Reynolds, George, and everyone else. They could all see that right now, Vincente was very weak. Vincente was a very powerful warrior. For him to be so weak now meant that he clearly had suffered an enormous injury. But suddenly, Linley remember a passage from his clan's records regarding the Violet Flame Warriors. A saint-level Violet Flame Warrior possessed a power known as the Nirvana Rebirth. Generally speaking, they were able to recover from any wounds at an astonishing speed. This Master Vincente is only at the Blue Flame level, and has just barely managed to enter the White Flame level. He is quite a distance away from the highest Violet Flame level. Most likely, he doesn't have the Nirvana Rebirth ability yet, but he should still be able to heal his wounds. Linley understood. The four Supreme Warriors. The Dragon Blood Warriors could be considered as the warriors with the greatest combat potential, while the Violet Flame Warriors were famous due to their Nirvana Rebirth ability. The Tiger-Striped Warriors were known for their attacking speed, while the Undying Warriors were famed for their strength and endurance. Uncle Dawson, Master Vincente has secret techniques for recovering from his wounds. There's no need for him to take any medicine. Linley spoke. Monroe Dawson nodded, then gave instructions to Armand. Armand spoke some well-intentioned words of guidance to Vincente, then left. As for Vincente, he lay down and rested for around 10 minutes, after which he looked much better. Linley couldn't help but feel astonished. The regenerative capabilities of the Violet Flame Warriors really were something special. Linley, your heavy sword. Immediately after recovering a bit, Vincente began to worry about his masterpiece. Quick, bring it over and let me take a look. I hope no damage was caused to the sword. Only now did any of them pay attention to the discarded heavy sword. All of them were amazed. The formerly pitch-black sword now had a faint blue glow on its surface, as though a layer of frost had formed atop it. Let me see. Vincente said urgently. Linley grabbed the heavy sword and immediately gave it to Vincente. Of all the people present, only Vincente had any true knowledge regarding weapons. Vincente still hadn't fully recovered from his injury, and so even lifting the sword up was hard for him. He was only able to grasp the hilt after allowing the tip of the sword to rest against the ground. Vincente's face was extremely solemn, and with his left hand, he began rap against the flat of the heavy sword's blade. Dang! 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 A series of crisp, clear sound could be heard. Vincente began to apply more and more force to each blow, and the ringing sounds were growing louder as well. Vincente rapped every single part of the heavy sword, constantly changing positions. While doing so, Vincente was staring intently at the sword while listening to the sounds. Next to him, Linley, Monroe Dawson, and the others had stopped breathing. They knew that most likely, Vincente was assessing the heavy sword to see if the bolt of lightning had caused any damage to it or had altered it somehow. After all, the bolt of thunder had struck it just after it had been quenched in the liquid solution. Rai-ying. With a single flick of Vincente's finger, the entire heavy sword emitted a beautiful sound. Hearing this almost perfect, rich, smooth sound, a look of wild joy appeared on Vincente's face. Heaven's will! Heaven's will! His face filled with wild joy, Vincente turned to look at Linley. Linley, it must be that heaven itself desired for you to possess this divine sword. Mr. Vincente, what's the situation with this heavy sword? Monroe Dawson asked. Vincente explained, the hardest part of forging an adamantine weapon is bringing out the full potential of the adamantine, since the alloyed metals are all significantly inferior to adamantine. Although the secret method of my clan allows me to alloy a high percentage of the other metals with the adamantine, I of course am not able to alloy it 100% perfectly. In other words, the internals of the sword that I had just forged were not perfectly consistent, and there were minute inconsistencies in each spot. A look of disbelieving joy was on Vincente's face. But I didn't expect that right after I finished quenching the sword, I would get struck by that bolt of lightning, which caused all of the remaining internal irregularities in the sword to be fused perfectly. The full potential of the adamantine has been released. I simply can't believe that something like this happened. This is heaven's will. Heaven's will. Linley was overjoyed as well. "Third bro, congratulations." Yale, Reynolds, and George all began to grin. They all understood. After having withstood this lightning strike, the quality of Linley's heavy sword had just improved by another level. And not just that. Look. There's a faint blue glow on the surface of this heavy sword. I've touched the surface of it, and it is unbelievably slick and smooth. Most likely in the future, when you kill someone using it, no blood will stick to it. Vincente chortled. Killing without being stained by blood. Monroe Dawson sighed in praise as well. The creation of this heavy sword was indeed miraculous, causing everyone present to sigh in amazement. This heavy sword was originally pitch black, but now it has a layer of blue light on it. At first glance, one would say that it was dark blue. Yale sighed in amazement. This sword really did have quite the majestic aura to it. "Yetian, Trey, bring me the measuring sticks," Vincente instructed. After finishing the smithing of a sword, naturally he would have to see what the sword's exact dimensions were. Linley could feel that the sword was very heavy, but he couldn't say exactly what its weight was. Monroe Dawson only chortled happily as he watched them take the measurements for this sword. The sword is 1.41 meters long. It weighs. Yale and the others quickly began to weigh the sword, but when they saw the figures, they were all astonished. 3,600 pounds. The heavy sword is 1.41 meters long, and 3,600 pounds heavy. Reynolds began screaming in a high-pitched voice. This was an extremely domineering heavy sword. And as far as it was lengthwise, it was just about right for Linley. What's more, Linley wasn't finished growing yet, and his strength would continue to increase as well. Naturally, this sword would only grow more and more easy to use in the future. "Third bro. What is the name of this heavy sword? Quick, pick a name." Yale was the first to say. Vincente and the others all looked at Linley. Reynolds interjected, "This was hit by a lightning bolt. I say, how about calling it Heavenly Thunder? That's really cool, right?" "That's way too vulgar." George shook his head. "How about Lightning's Majesty?" Reynolds continued. Yale and everyone else began to laugh. Monroe Dawson teased, "Reynolds, why call it Lightning's Majesty? Let's just go ahead and call the sword Reynolds." Translator's note: there is a pun here. In Chinese, Reynolds' name is Lanyo, with Lei meaning thunder. Heavenly lightning is Tianlei, while Lightning's Majesty is Lei Wei. Everyone is teasing Reynolds for picking names that sound similar to his own. Reynolds pouted and fell silent after letting out a "Humph." "It doesn't necessarily have to be related to lightning." Linley laughed. "Since there's no way for this sword to be sharpened, then let's just call it bladeless." Linley casually picked this name. It was a very simple one, but Linley liked it. Bladeless. The heavy sword, bladeless. Not bad. Yale nodded. Bladeless. Vincente, Yetian, Trey, and the others all savored the name for a while, then nodded. That day, Monroe Dawson gifted Linley with a fine sheath for a heavy sword. It was a deep blue color and forged from precious metals. It was only half a meter long, but had openings on both ends. Linley could sheath his heavy sword into it from either direction, with half of it remaining visible. This was how sheaths for heavy swords were usually designed. Scabbards that were meant to cover the entire sword were simply too long, and once the warrior removed the sword from the sheath, the meter-long sheath would be very impractical and get in the way. This half-meter-long scabbard was very light and wouldn't cause any hindrance. That night at a banquet, Linley dressed in his warrior clothes and carried this heavy sword with him. Thanks to his long-term training, his 1.9-meter-tall body was rippling with muscles, and his warrior's clothes put his charisma on full display. With this heavy sword on his back, he did indeed have the aura of a powerful heavy swordsman. "Ha ha, Linley." Monroe Dawson laughed as he looked at Linley. In my opinion, nobody who sees you would believe that you were a genius magus. Linley was slightly startled, but then he laughed as well. Dressed like this, naturally it would be hard for others to tell that he was a magus. I remember when we first arrived at the Ernst Institute, when we were in our first year, third bro was only 9. Even then, he was able to easily lift up and throw that 9-year-old who won the tournament quite a distance. Ever since then, I knew that third bro was extremely talented as a warrior as well. Yale chortled. Everyone was enjoying this banquet immensely, and after having acquired this heavy sword, Linley felt very pleased as well. When I have some time, I'll definitely have to analyze and train in using heavy swords. Linley made his decision. When he had originally acquired the Blood Violet God's Word, Linley had also spent several months before totally comprehending all the best ways to use a flexible sword such as Blood Violet. But Linley had the feeling that, comparatively speaking, training with Blood Violet wasn't that hard, only fast and strange. But this heavy sword weighed 3,600 pounds. On the surface, it would seem that the techniques for using a heavy sword were simple. Block, smash, etc. But Linley knew that was just the most basic of movements. Using this sword to its full potential definitely wouldn't be that easy. He knew this because his clan's records had described the ways in which that ancestor of his had used a massive warhammer. Clearly, there were deep mysteries with regards to how one used weapons. To bring out a heavy weapon's full power and potential? This was very hard. But upon succeeding, it would possess tremendous power. The banquet ended. Linley began to engage in some simple sword stances in an empty courtyard within the Dawson conglomerate's estate, trying to feel for the heavy sword's balance, and how it felt when thrusting and chopping. Just as Linley was beginning to totally immerse himself in getting a basic feel for the technique behind using such a sword. Boss, boss. Come back, quick. That Clady has finally appeared. Beebe's excited voice suddenly rang out in Linley's mind. Linley instantly came to his normal senses. Clady is back. Linley felt his previously calm heart suddenly fill with excitement, and his body suddenly began to brim with power. He didn't have time to explain too much to his brothers. He bid a simple farewell, and then headed for his own residence at high speed. Book 7, Heaven and Earth Turned Upside Down, Chapter 18, A Missing Hand. Bearing the adamantine heavy sword on his back, Linley quickly made his way through the streets. However, just from appearances, nobody could tell how heavy it truly was, and so Linley didn't attract any notice from bystanders. Clady finally came. I've waited so long. Linley suppressed the excitement he felt. Calm. This time, no matter what, I can't make any mistakes again. The first time, he had thought he had a better than 90% chance of success, but unexpectedly, that saint-level fate guard had appeared out of nowhere and caused Linley's plan to fail. This time, Linley didn't want to make any mistakes. Linley. Doering Coward's slightly hoarse voice rang out. Remember, you previously were together for a period of time with Shaq and his men. Upon Clady's return, Shaq might report that fact to him. Understood. Linley had thought of this possibility long ago. But for the sake of being able to find the place where Clady would end up, he had to travel alongside Shaq, which resulted in them arriving together in Hess City. He definitely could not kill Shaq, because once Shaq and his group of men died, then Clady perhaps wouldn't show himself at all. I had to act in this way. But even if Clady knew that I had traveled along with Shaq for a time, there's nothing he can do, because I already know his whereabouts. There's no way he can escape. Linley was totally confident. At the same time, Beebe, who was spiritually connected to him, was watching over Clady and his men. As they chatted, Linley arrived at Kayon Road. In order to prevent himself from being seen by Clady's men, Linley immediately headed towards his residence via a series of back alleys. A black blur suddenly traveled several dozen meters and leapt into Linley's arms. Bibi. Laughing, Linley looked at the little shadow mouse in his arms. Bibi's eyes were gleaming as he delightedly conversed mentally, "Boss, I saw Clady come here not too long ago. But I only caught a glimpse of half his face before he entered the manor. Boss, those two people you employed were too useless. They didn't notice him at all." HRM. Linley was somewhat suspicious. He had ordered those two to stay on the lookout. Logically speaking, as soon as Clady had appeared, they should have noticed him. "Milord, milord." Ada and Air ran over and said respectfully, "Milord, we just saw a large group of people enter that manor not too long ago." "A large group of people?" Linley immediately asked. "Was one of them missing a hand?" Air shook his head. "No, milord." "Milord, you ordered us to pay attention to any groups of people entering the manor, and you also told us to watch for a man with a missing hand. But we didn't see anyone with a missing hand in that group." "Impossible," Linley said with certainty. There definitely was a man with a missing hand. Bibi had already seen half of Clady's face, and given Bibi's eyesight, he definitely wouldn't have been mistaken. Since Bibi was certain he had seen him, then Clady was definitely in that group. Definitely. Hearing how certain Linley was, the man felt awkward. "Milord, perhaps there were too many people in the group, so my elder brother and I didn't see him." Linley frowned. "Too many people?" Originally, when he fought with Clady's squad at the palace, Linley and Bibi had killed quite a number, leaving only 10 or so knights remaining. And given the number of magical beasts on the road here, it would be quite exceptional if all 10 of Clady's men were still alive. How could this be considered too many people? "Many people? How many?" Linley asked. "Very many. At least 70 or 80. The man said haltingly, seemingly uncertain. Regardless, there were very many. That group suddenly appeared and then entered the manor. We two brothers couldn't clearly see every single person in the group. Perhaps there really was a man with a missing hand amongst them." Linley was confused. 70 or 80 people. Even when he had attempted to kill Clady in the palace, Clady's Wild Thunder squad had only 30 or so people. What's more, after having been reduced in numbers by himself and Bibi, how could so many more people have appeared out of nowhere? Linley didn't understand it. "Boss, there really were a lot of people." Bibi's voice also sounded out now, in Linley's mind. "By the time I noticed Clady, he was just about to enter the manor. I only had the chance to catch a glimpse of half his face. But behind him there were at least 50 or so people. But as to how many people entered the manor before Clady, I'm not too sure." Linley definitely trusted Bibi, of course. That many people? Linley wondered to himself. "All right, you can go now. This is a reward for you and your brother. Keep watching for me." Linley tossed the half-filled sack of gold, which had 50 coins in it. Accepting the sack, he took a peek inside through the opening. The insides were filled with gleaming gold. This half-bag had to have near 50 coins in it. His heart began to be filled with excitement. When he had escaped here to Hess City, he hadn't even been able to feed himself. Now, after only having worked for Linley for a few days, the man tossed him a sack with 50 gold coins? How could he not be wildly excited? "Thank you, milord. Thank you, milord." He made up his mind. He and his elder brother would consider keeping a close watch on the people inside the manor. He immediately departed, then ran to the top floor of the nearby restaurant where he and his elder brother kept watch. Within the courtyard, all alone, Linley was pondering what he should do next. A white light shone out from the coiling dragon ring, transforming into the white-robed, white-haired, white-bearded Do-Ring Coward. Do-Ring Coward stroked his beard. Chuckling, he said, "Linley, what's wrong?" Are you in a bad mood? Linley lifted his head up to look at Douring Coward. Upon seeing his grandpa Douring, Linley felt his heart calm down a little. With such an experienced elder by his side, at least Linley wouldn't grow frantic or feel unsure of himself. Grandpa Douring. I'm wondering where that group of people with Clady came from. Linley said. Douring Coward chuckled. You are wasting your time wondering about this. Why don't you act instead? Hide in a corner of a wall in their manor and take a look for yourself. By then, you will know exactly who these people with Clady are. Linley began to laugh. Right. Why was he wasting time? Carrying this heavy sword will still impact my speed. Linley removed his adamantine heavy sword, then entered his bedroom and placed it under his bed, then grabbed his bed sheets. Standing on Linley's shoulders, BB stared curiously at the adamantine heavy sword. He mentally asked Linley, Boss, is this heavy sword the treasure which you had created for you using that adamantine ore? Linley laughed and nodded. How heavy is this heavy sword? BB asked curiously. 3,600 pounds. Linley replied honestly. BB rubbed his little nose with his paws in surprise, while his beady little eyes spun around in shock as well as he stared at the adamantine heavy sword. Enough. You'll have plenty of time to look at it later. Linley put down the bed sheets, hiding the heavy sword. Ah. Hey boss, I suddenly remember something. That Clady probably already knows that you are right here. BB looked at the interspatial ring on Linley's finger and cried out in alarm. What? Why? Linley was extremely shocked. Boss, you personalized and bound your blood violet God's word using a drop of blood. I remember you saying that when you were imprisoned within the Radiant Temple, although blood violet was confiscated, you could still sense where it was. Interspatial rings are also personalized through blood. Wouldn't Clady then be able to sense the location of his interspatial ring? BB urgently transmitted his thoughts to Linley. But hearing this, Linley only began to laugh. Ha ha. Standing next to them, Douring Coward began to laugh as well. Only, BB wasn't able to hear Douring Coward's laughter. Immediately upon leaving the city of Fenley, Linley had already questioned Douring Coward regarding this interspatial ring he had taken. BB. Linley laughed as he explained. This interspatial ring is different from a divine artifact such as blood violet. Technically speaking, an interspatial ring isn't a divine artifact, just a very valuable magical item. Its basic underpinnings are quite similar to the Magi crystal cards, which use fingerprints to personalize and recognize an owner. While interspatial rings use blood to do the same. Only the owner of an interspatial ring can open it and take out its contents. However, when a magical item is taken away, there's no way for the owner of it to sense the exact location of his item. Do you think divine artifacts are that common? Even my adamantine heavy sword, bladeless, isn't at the level of divine artifacts. Divine artifacts. It was impossible for a divine artifact to be forged within this material plane, in the Yulan continent. Things such as the coiling dragon ring and the blood violet sword were both very ancient items. The coiling dragon ring had suddenly emitted a terrifying burst of energy back at the Radiant Temple and saved me. What's more, when using magic through it, it reduces the amount of mage force and spiritual energy needed to a sixth of normal. Blood violet, in turn, can become flexible or straight as the wielder chooses, and is virtually indestructible. Linley had a certain theory. It was already a fact that the coiling dragon ring had secrets hidden within that he hadn't yet discovered. That terrifying burst of energy at the Radiant Temple was proof. As for blood violet, for it to be used as a focusing seal for that mysterious magical formation meant that it definitely had special qualities to it as well. Only, right now Linley was still too weak and couldn't discover what was so special about it. Blood violet. Linley glanced at the sword at his waist which he was wearing like a belt. What was the real ability of this mysterious blood violet flexible sword? Bibi, you stay here for now. Linley instructed. Got it? Bibi obediently remained within the courtyard, while Linley stealthily slipped out of his residence and headed quietly towards Clady and Shaq's manor. Linley pressed himself against one of the walls of the manor which Shaq had purchased. Snick. Linley's sharp claws emerged. He easily cut a small opening into the wall, then transformed his hands back to normal as he peered inside through the opening. That night Linley had stayed at the residence with Shaq. He had memorized the entire layout, including the man-made hill and which rooms were which. Linley had chosen to make his cut in a very particular location. Through this cut, he was able to see into both the front courtyard and the back courtyard, without anything obstructing his vision. My royal father. Linley's sensitive ears actually managed to pick up the conversation between Shaq and Clady in the back courtyard. Linley carefully peered in that direction. Indeed, Clady and Shaq were walking shoulder by shoulder within Linley's area of vision. It's Clady. Linley watched carefully. But what he saw utterly stunned him. Clady's hand, his hand. Right now, both of Clady's hands were in perfect condition. But Linley had clearly seen Clady's hand fall off after being cut. He had even stolen the interspatial ring from the hand. There definitely was no mistake. To regenerate a lost hand would require the services of a light-style archmagus of the 9th rank at least. Linley was astonished. When Clady left, he didn't have a single magus with him. How did he get mixed up with an archmagus of the 9th rank? Royal Father, how did you end up encountering forces belonging to the Radiant Church? Those people are all so formidable. Shaq said in a somewhat astonished voice. Clady nodded. Of course they are. These people are amongst the most terrifying people the Radiant Church leads. The ascetics led by Lord Fallen Leaf have many combatants of the 9th rank amongst them. Traveling by their side, we were quite safe the entire time. Clady was speaking in a normal tone. Logically speaking, someone from the opposite side of a distant wall shouldn't be able to hear him. But Linley, as a dragon blood warrior, possessed freakishly enhanced hearing, and heard every word clearly. A group of ascetics? Led by Lord Fallen Leaf. The look on Linley's face changed. Lord Fallen Leaf was a peak stage saint-level combatant. And he had with him a group of freakishly strong ascetics, quite a few of whom had reached the 9th rank. Book 7, Heaven and Earth Turned Upside Down, Chapter 19, with bated breath. Linley quietly left, returning to his own manor. On the road back from Clady's residence to his own, Linley's face was a mask of unhappiness. This news he had just received had made Linley think that things would be much more difficult now. Linley. What decision have you come to? Doering Coward appeared from within the coiling dragon ring. There was still a degree of distance between Linley's residence and Clady's manor. Doering Coward, this 5,000-year-old ghost of a peak stage saint-level combatant, wasn't afraid that Lord Fallen Leaf would see him here. Me. Linley balled his fists. Endure. I can only endure and wait. Doering Coward nodded with satisfaction. He had watched every step of Linley's journey and growth. Doering Coward felt affection and love for Linley as he might a grandson. He didn't wish for Linley to act too rashly. Linley. Don't worry. Stroking his beard, Doering Coward spoke confidently. That Fallen Leaf probably just let Clady travel along with him since it didn't inconvenience him. He definitely won't stay with Clady for too long. In the past, when Clady was still the king of a kingdom, his status was already much lower than that of Fallen Leaf. As for the current Clady, the kingdom of Fenley itself has been destroyed, making him even less important. What's more, based on my calculations, the new holy capital which the Radiant Church will select most likely will not be Hess City. Thus, Fallen Leaf won't stay here too long. Linley nodded. The previous holy capital, Fenley City, had been totally annihilated by the army of magical beasts from the mountain range of magical beasts. Only rubble was left. The Radiant Church definitely would not permit such an event to happen again. Naturally, they wouldn't erect the new holy capital in a location like Hesse City, which was so near their new borders. After all, the king of the mountain range of magical beasts, Coilin, had previously said that the magical beasts under his domain could possibly expand to the point of taking up half of the Holy Union. Right now, they had only taken up a third of the Holy Union's territory. If they were to truly take over half, then Hesse City would fall into that area as well. Haydns and the other top-level members of the Radiant Church simply did not have confidence in their ability to resist this deity-level Coilin. Although the Radiant Church still had untapped powers of its own that it hadn't put on display yet, once they deployed those powers against Coilin, it would be equivalent to them expending all of the resources they had saved up over 10 millennia in one battle. Haydns didn't dare to act in such a way. Just wait. Linley took a deep breath, forcing himself to remain calm. He already knew where Clady was. So long as he didn't make any mistakes, Clady definitely wouldn't be able to escape. Within a restaurant opposite of Shaq's manor, the same restaurant where Linley's two servants maintained their vigil over Shaq and Clady. That very day. Wearing a very ordinary sleeveless sweatshirt, Linley's powerful chest muscles were plainly visible. Those two mighty, muscled arms and that heavy sword on his back gave the impression of an extremely strong man. A heavy sword warrior. Linley's current appearance was a very commonly seen one. Warriors prioritized muscular training the most, and thus many of them had powerful bodies, and quite a few used heavy swords as well. 2 plates of roast meat and 2 bottles of bullfighters. Linley said in a deep voice. Sir, please take a seat first. Seeing how powerful Linley appeared, the waiter was extremely respectful to him. Linley selected a seat located towards the interior of the restaurant, which still offered a clear vantage point to see through the door and the windows towards Clady's manor. The waiter immediately pulled the chair out for Linley to sit on. Sir, please wait a moment. The waiter said with a smile. At this time, another waiter came over with those 2 bottles of bullfighters. Bullfighter was a type of extremely strong liquor, particularly favored by powerful warriors. Casting a sneak glance at the heavy sword on Linley's back, the attendant was secretly shocked. Oh my lord! What a long, thick heavy sword, and from the coloration, it must have been made from special materials. It must weigh at least a few hundred pounds. This gentleman must be an extremely strong warrior. At this restaurant, when the servers were bored, they would sneak peeks at their various customers. After having done so for a long time, their eyes had become quite sharp and their guesses accurate. Seeing how easily Linley was carrying this heavy sword about, they could immediately tell that Linley was an extremely powerful warrior. The elder of the 2 brothers whom Linley had stationed in this restaurant walked over at this time. Take this roasted meat back and give it to Bibi. Linley didn't give him a chance to speak before issuing orders. Yes, my lord. The elder of the 2 brothers didn't have anything important to do either. He immediately carried out Linley's instructions and took the roast meat back. And then, Linley just quietly sat in the restaurant and drank his liquor. Linley drank wine very slowly. A single bottle of liquor was enough to last him 2 or 3 hours. He just continued to drink while keeping an eye on Clady's manor. That night, in the higher levels of the restaurant, a traveling bard was belting out songs, and the entire bar was extremely rowdy. Quite a few warriors were shouting and laughing at each other. Because of the catastrophe, Hesse City was more lively than it had ever been. Many powerful warriors patronized this restaurant, and all of them were very energetic. They actually began to compete in arm wrestling. 10,000 gold coins. The winner gets 10,000 gold coins. The contest organizer shouted in a high-pitched voice. To many of the powerful warriors who had fled here after the disaster, although 10,000 gold coins wasn't a small sum of money, it wasn't a particularly large sum either. I'll join. These 10,000 gold coins are mine. A 2.2-meter tall brown-haired warrior with a barrel-sized chest sat down. His arms were definitely thicker than most people's legs. HRMPH, I'll give you a go. A red-haired man with a body similar to Linley's walked over and sat down as well. The two immediately stretched their arms out and clasped hands. Immediately afterwards, the muscles in their arms began to bulge. Those warriors drinking next to them all began to shout out loudly in encouragement. This sort of life isn't that bad. Linley knew that waiting for Fallen Leaf to leave would be an extremely boring event. Who knew how long Fallen Leaf would stay? 1 day? 2 days? 10. Linley turned to watch with interest as well. Neither of these two are weak. They are at least warriors of the 6th rank. Linley nodded to himself. Right now, experts could be seen everywhere in Hess City. Their arms locked against each other, these two warriors were exerting 10,000 pounds of force against each other. Grr. That brown-haired warrior whose arms were thicker than most people's legs suddenly let out a mighty shout, and all of the veins on his arm began to pop out, crisscrossing his arm like worms beneath the skin. Anyone looking at him would think that his veins were about to explode at any moment. The red-haired man's face had turned red as well, as he wasn't willing to back down in the slightest. Creak. Creak. The table underneath their arms was beginning to shiver as well. The tables and chairs in this restaurant were all made from steel, and were extremely sturdy. Generally speaking, powerful warriors were able to carefully calibrate and control the amount of power released from their wrists as they engaged in arm wrestling above the table. For the table to begin quivering due to their strength was a sign that both men were at their limits. Haha, let's go Harold Holloda. Damn it, Harold, try harder. Second bro, don't lose in front of me. All the warriors who were drinking around them were howling loudly in support. Slowly, that large man with massive arms named Harold gained a slight advantage, causing the red-haired warrior to immediately try desperately to resist. Hey-ah! With a loud roar, Harold smashed his opponent's arm against the table, causing an impression to be left upon the steel table. Haha, I win. Harold laughed loudly. F***ck. Second bro, beat it? Let me come. This big dumb idiot wants to win 10,000 gold? Humph. A one-eyed red-haired warrior walked over. The restaurant was very rowdy, and those energetic warriors screamed and shouted, while up above, the traveling bard was also singing loudly so as to get that bit of gold the restaurant had promised him. Noisy. But in this rowdy environment, 3 or 4 people remained silent. The warriors around them quite conscientiously didn't disturb those people. All of these warriors had significant outside experience, and they had good judgment. They knew who they could afford to offend, and who they could not. The next morning, soon after Linley sat down. HRM. Linley suddenly saw a familiar face. Lord Fallen Leaf. As skinny as a beggar, Lord Fallen Leaf casually walked out of Clady's manor and departed, with 2 barefooted ascetics dressed in sackcloth by his side. He left? But only Fallen Leaf and 2 ascetics have left. Linley considered for a moment. He knew that many ascetics had come on this journey. And many experts were amongst their ranks. Right now, only 3 had left. Continue to wait. Linley took a sip of liquor. He would keep waiting. Clady, Shaq, and the others sent off Lord Fallen Leaf, watching him leave from the gate. Royal Father, there is something that I forgot to tell you. Shaq slapped himself on the head. Royal Father, Lord Linley traveled with us for a time, but 2 days ago he left. He was heading north. Linley. Hearing this name, Clady almost shouted aloud in surprise. This Linley had nearly taken his life on 2 separate occasions. What's wrong, Royal Father? Shaq questioned. As far as Shaq could tell, this wasn't a major issue. After all, the kingdom of Fenley had already been annihilated. Their royal clan was royal only in name now, and not in truth. It would be surprising if Linley had actually continued to be loyal to them. He traveled with you. Did he know that you are living here? Clady immediately asked. Yes. He even stayed here a night. Shaq said, confused. Clady's heart began to shudder. This Linley is definitely still in Hess City. Clady knew that Linley wanted to kill him, and wouldn't leave just like that. No worries. There's still a large group of ascetics living here. Clady comforted himself. But when the ascetics leave, I will leave with them. Clady made his decision. Only by traveling together with the ascetics would he feel safe. Clady carefully looked in every direction. He even had this strange feeling that Linley was looking at him from somewhere nearby. A day passed. A second day passed. Aside from going back at night to sleep, Linley spent all his time at the restaurant. Once, a foolish person tried to cause Linley some trouble, but Linley booted him from the back of the restaurant to the front of the restaurant with one kick. Thereafter, no one else disturbed Linley. In the blink of an eye, 6 days passed. During these past 6 days, aside from Fallen Leaf and those two ascetics, none of the other ascetics had left. Within Clady's manner. Everyone, why are you in such a rush to leave? Clady looked at the 3 representatives of the ascetics in front of him, trying to persuade them. An old, golden-haired man said calmly, Clady, we must head towards the new holy capital now. Sorry for inconveniencing you these past days. We'll leave now. These 3 ascetics totally ignored Clady's entreaties as they prepared to leave immediately. Milords, you are heading to the new holy capital? I wish to go as well. How about I travel alongside you? Clady said immediately, while at the same time, he instructed his son Shaq, Shaq, prepare some things. We leave immediately. At this point in time, Clady didn't feel any sense of security at all. If only Kaiser was left with him, Clady didn't feel confident that Kaiser would be able to protect him against both Linley and that freakish magical beast of his. Travel along with us. The golden-haired old man frowned. In truth, they were not making a trip towards the new holy capital at all. They had a secret mission. Impossible. We are under strict orders from the church. The golden-haired man said coldly. The other 2 looked coldly at Clady as well. If you follow us secretly, you should know what the end result will be. After they spoke, the 3 turned and left, leaving behind a poleaxed Clady. Clady hadn't expected that these ascetics would forbid him from traveling with them. Milords. Clady chased out from the main hall, but the 50 or so ascetics had already left the manor via the gate. Not a single one of them turned to look back at him. Clady considered what to do. He didn't dare to follow them. Although the Radiant Church taught that men should be benevolent, when they decided to act against someone, they were definitely without mercy. Right now, Clady was no longer of particular use to the Radiant Church. Those ascetics definitely would not fear to kill him. Royal Father. Shaq walked over, looking at Clady. Clady frowned. He was quiet for a moment. Then, he gave his orders. Let's leave from the back gate. We will leave immediately. Yes, immediately. The danger grows with each passing minute. Book 7, Heaven and Earth Turned Upside Down, Chapter 20, The Full Story. Within the restaurant. Seeing a large group of ascetics leave Clady's manor, Linley was wildly exultant. At a glance, Linley could tell that over 50 people were in that group of ascetics. For such a large group of them to leave most likely meant that all of them had left. It's been 6 or 7 days. By now, it's almost certain that Shaq has told Clady about our meeting. Most likely, Clady has already been able to guess that I'm nearby. Linley casually tossed down a few gold coins. Suddenly, gusts of air began to wrap around him, and moving like the breeze, Linley agilely flew out of the restaurant. Despite bearing the heavy sword on his back, with the assistance of wind-style magic, he still moved with great ease. But of course, this was due to Linley having become a magus of the 7th rank. If a magus of the 3rd rank had been the one to cast the spell, the effect wouldn't have been nearly as good. "BB, watch the back door," Linley mentally instructed BB. "Boss, got it?" As Linley rushed towards one of the exterior walls of Clady's manor, he began to mumble the words to another spell, "Wind Scout." Whoosh! With Linley at the center, a gust of air suddenly spread out in all directions. Closing his eyes, Linley could clearly sense everything the Wind Scout had detected. HRM. Gathering near the back gate. The Wind Scout spell could only detect bodies and objects. It couldn't actually make out faces clearly. However, through the usage of the Wind Scout, Linley had already been able to discover that the people inside the manor were all hurriedly moving towards the back courtyard. Clearly, they were all getting ready to flee. Humph. As predicted. With a quiet movement, Linley flowed into Clady's manor, moving into the front courtyard with movements as light as the wind. Quietly but quickly, Linley made his way on the inside paths towards the back courtyard. "Hurry, hurry!" Clady berated angrily. "Let's go from the back gate. We are heading out immediately. We are leaving Hess City," Clady said directly. The royal consort was confused. "Your Majesty, aren't we all living here just fine? Why dash?" Whap! Clady slapped her across the face. "Enough crap!" Clady snarled. "Hurry up. Forget about the horses. You two, you are responsible for the princess and the royal consort." Clady ordered 2 of his knights, and then had a 3rd one open the back gate. Linley, hiding behind a man-made hill, watched this all while laughing coldly. "As I thought. Not a single ascetic is left." With a leap, Linley retreated at high speed, moving to a place where Clady and Kaiser wouldn't be able to see him, then he leapt past the wall. And then, Linley turned and moved at high speed to the back gate. But just as Linley had rounded the corner, he came to a sudden halt. BB was right next to the back gate. Kriyayak. The back gate began to open. BB immediately scurried over at high speed to a patch of wild grass nearby. Given that BB was only fist-sized, the wild grass was totally capable of covering and hiding BB's entire body. "BB. When Clady comes out, tell me right away." Linley hid behind a corner, and his entire body began to be covered with black scales. Snick. His forehead, back, elbows, and kneecaps all began to sprout sharp spikes. And that long, iron whip-like draconic tail sprouted out as well. Linley's black eyes suddenly transformed into a dark gold color, the same color as the eyes of the armored razorback Wyrm. Total dragon form. Wind style supporting magic, supersonic. At the same time, Linley reinforced himself with a wind spell. After having completely dragon formed, Linley felt that his body was full of limitless power. Right now, that 3,600-pound adamantine heavy sword didn't have any impact on Linley at all. To a mighty warrior who could easily lift up something weighing hundreds of thousands of pounds, what was a mere 3,600? Comparatively speaking, it was like asking an ordinary man who could lift 100 pounds to carry a 1-pound item on him. Would it impact him? Clady continued to urge his men, and one wild thunder knight after another began to step out of the back gate. Clady himself walked through the gate, with Shaq by his side. And then the princess and the royal consort, under the protection of the wild thunder knights, headed out as well. As for Kaiser, he was at the very end, serving as their guard and escort. "Boss, Clady came out." Just after Clady stepped out of the manor, BB's voice rang out in Linley's mind. The eyes of Linley, who had been hiding behind the corner this entire time, suddenly began to shine. Whoosh! A mighty leap forward, combined with the wind around him propelling him forward at high speed. Swish! In the blink of an eye, a black, human-sized blur slashed through a distance of 70 meters, charging directly at the back gate to Clady's manor. Somewhat caught off guard, Clady turned to look, and when he did, he saw that this human-shaped blur was already next to him. That familiar figure made Clady's heart quail. Before he even had a chance to call out or to react, a powerful force suddenly bound him. "Don't move. Otherwise, you die." Linley's voice was transmitted directly to Clady's ear. Ah! The royal consort had just stepped out of the gate. Upon seeing Linley, she was so frightened that she immediately screamed. But then, with a snick sound, the consort's head went flying off. Linley retracted his claws. The severed head of the consort oozed blood everywhere, while her body collapsed to the floor. Monster! The princess, terrified, retreated backwards. "Release His Majesty." The Wild Thunder Knights who had left along with Shaq immediately charged over, but as they did, a black blur flashed towards them. The little shadow mouse, BB, who had suddenly transformed to half a meter in length, landed on the ground. As he did, those two warriors who had wanted to charge over collapsed, as half of their necks had been severed. "None of you resist. Resistance is futile." Linley's cold voice rang out. At this time, Kaiser charged over as well. "Lord Kaiser, what is that monster?" The princess was terrified. But Shaq, whom Clady had explained everything to, knew that this monster was actually Linley. The aberration in front of them was covered from head to toe in black scales, and there were spikes sprouting from his forehead, knees, elbows, and back. Its scale-covered feet and claws were all extremely sharp. And what's more, it had an iron whip-like draconic tail. Right now, that draconic tail was wrapping tightly around Clady, preventing him from moving at all. With each small swaying motion of Linley's draconic tail, Clady's body swayed as well. This scene stunned everyone present. "Kaiser! This time, you don't have any chance." Linley's cold voice rang out. A pained look was on Kaiser's face. He knew that even if he fought one-on-one against Linley, victory was no sure thing. What's more, Linley had that freakish magical beast companion who was on the same level of power as him. Kaiser wasn't confident in his ability to deal with either Linley or the magical beast, BB. And now that Clady had been caught by Linley, he, Kaiser, did indeed have no chance at all. Linley. Release my royal father." Shaq shouted angrily. Linley glanced at Shaq with his cold, dark golden eyes. Shaq shivered, no longer daring to speak. Right now, Linley's appearance had stupefied everyone present. Those Wild Thunder Knights who had followed Clady had also battled against and been slaughtered by Linley and BB in the past. They knew exactly how powerful Linley and his freakish magical beast companion BB were. Linley. Just as Clady was going to beg for mercy. Crunch. Crack. Linley actually tore off Clady's ring finger and index finger, then casually tossed them in the direction of the princess and Kaiser's group. Ah! Clady couldn't refrain from howling from the agony of having his fingers ripped off. "Clady, I'll tell you right now that you are definitely going to die," Linley said casually. Clady turned his fierce, tiger-like glare towards Linley. But what welcomed his gaze was Linley's cold, emotionless pair of dark gold eyes. "Right now, you have two choices. The first is to be tortured to death. The second is to tell me who you gave my mother to, and who killed her. And then, I'll let you die an easy death," Linley said calmly. Linley knew very well that the best way to deal with someone like Clady was to lay it out clearly for him. Otherwise, Clady would think that there was still some hope of living. He would grit his teeth and refuse to answer, for the sake of that hope. "No. If you are willing to spare me, Linley once again remorselessly ripped out another one of Clady's fingers. Calmly, Linley said, "You are definitely going to die. The only question is, Will you tell the truth early and spare yourself some pain and suffering? Your Majesty. Kaiser was about to immediately rush over. Kaiser, do you want everyone present to die? Linley's dark gold eyes stared at Kaiser. Kaiser instantly halted. He understood that Linley and Bibi definitely had the power to kill everyone present. Even he, Kaiser, would only have the ability to flee. Facing a combined attack from both Linley and Bibi, he didn't have any chance of victory at all. Kaiser really didn't know what to do. Linley looked back at Clady. Clady's face was totally pale. Large beads of sweat the size of soybeans had gathered on his forehead. Right now, the amount of force Linley was exerting on him with his tail was very high. Continue thinking. The longer you think, the more pain you will be in. Linley's scale-covered claw reached out and grabbed Clady's ear. Guessing what Linley was about to do, Clady howled, "No. Ryip." Clady's left ear was ripped off by Linley, and he howled in agony while cursing wildly, "Linley, you bastard, you are a goddamn devil. Keep on wasting time." Linley's claw slowly reached towards Clady's face. "This time, it'll be your eyes. Tell me, would you prefer your left eye, or your right eye?" Linley's face was still expressionless. When Clady looked at Linley, hoping to gather anything from Linley's eyes or facial expressions, all he could see was that unmoving, scale-covered face, and those cold, merciless dark gold eyes. "If you don't decide, I'll decide for you." Just then, it was your left ear. Now, it will be your right eye. Linley reached out with his claws. "No. I'll talk. I'll talk." Clady howled with all his might. Linley retracted his claws. "Then speak." "I'll talk. I'll talk." Tears actually appeared in Clady's eyes. He really had mentally collapsed. Linley had no intention of sparing him whatsoever. No matter what he did, he was going to die. If he talked, at least he would die an easy death. If he didn't, he would be tortured to death. None of the Wild Thunder Knights standing off in the distance dared to say a word. Linley and Bibi, man and magical beast, were really too terrifying, too formidable. Clady was roaring furiously in his heart, "Radiant Church, this time you didn't give a damn about me and left me behind. Don't blame me for giving you an enemy which will be terrifying to deal with in the future. Linley, I'll tell you. Each year, the Radiant Church will offer extremely pure souls to the Radiant Sovereign. The Radiant Sovereign needs only two things, the faith of worshippers, and pure souls," Clady said directly. Linley stared at Clady with his emotionless eyes. "What does this have to do with my mother?" Clady continued, "The purer the soul offered to the Radiant Sovereign, the greater the gifts the Radiant Sovereign will bestow upon the Church. That year, my younger brother Patterson and I had just stepped out of the Radiant Temple. When I saw your mother, I was instantly stunned. Her eyes looked so pure, so innocent. From that first glance I had of your mother, my mind was made up. I had the feeling that your mother's soul must be extremely pure." After having heard this, Linley could guess the rest. "I could tell that your father was only an ordinary person, and thus I ordered Patterson to go and directly abduct your mother. The next day, I delivered your mother to the Radiant Church." Clady took a deep breath. "Indeed, your mother's soul was incomparably pure. When the Radiant Church killed your mother, offering her soul as a sacrifice to the Radiant Sovereign, the Radiant Sovereign blessed them with greater gifts than they had ever received. And this was the reason why the Radiant Temple decided to reward me with a divine blessing like none they had ever given before. The blessing raised me directly from a warrior of the 7th rank to the 9th rank. Although it would make my future advancement impossible, I was still satisfied. In addition, the Radiant Temple gifted me with a saint-level fate guard." Clady looked at Linley. "Your mother's soul really was very remarkable. The Radiant Temple actually gave me so many things for her. From this, You can imagine how heavily the radiant sovereign had rewarded them when they had sacrificed your mother's soul to him. Book 7, Heaven and Earth Turned Upside Down, Chapter 21, Fate. Hearing Clady's words, Linley fell silent. Ha, Linley, now you should know who your true enemy is, right? But are you capable of dealing with the Radiant Temple? Clady laughed wildly, on the edge of hysteria. Clady knew that he was going to die, and at the moment of his death, he had decided to bring as much chaos to the world as he could. Do you speak the truth? Linley's voice was hoarse. Actually, Linley already believed what Clady had just told him, precisely because this was the only possible explanation as to why the Radiant Church would have given Clady a saint-level fate guard. You yourself know whether I speak truly or not. Clady laughed wildly. Linley fell silent. Linley, you should have considered the fact that you are a genius magus and a dragon blood warrior. In the eyes of the Radiant Church, you have much more potential than me, a warrior who was only raised to the 9th rank due to secret magical methods. In the future, you will most likely be both a saint-level supreme warrior and a saint-level grand magus. If it wasn't for the secret I just divulged, even if you had killed me, the Radiant Church probably wouldn't bear to execute you. Clady laughed loudly. Linley understood this reasoning. Clady should be telling the truth. Doering Coward's voice sounded out in Linley's mind. Given Doering Coward's experience, his ability to judge whether someone was telling the truth or not was much better than Linley's. Linley had deep faith in Doering Coward. At this time, on Kayon Road within the city of Hesse, there were 6 ruthless-looking men dressed in violet robes. These 6 violet-robed men all naturally emitted the aura of cold, arrogant experts, causing everyone else around them to avoid them. These 6 people were heading directly for Clady's manor. Right now, they had no idea as to what had happened at Clady's manor. Waiters Wei-tesi, are the ascetics located here? One of the violet-robed men said in a low voice. The leader of the violet-robed men nodded. Right. From what I understand, the ascetics are all staying in this Clady's manor. This assignment of ours is extremely important. It's best that we head out together alongside the ascetics. These 6 people were the 6 special executors of the ecclesiastical tribunal. They had just arrived at Hesse City, and this was the only address they had on hand. They didn't know that a few minutes ago, the ascetics had all left. They had just barely missed them. HRM? Why is there no one here? Upon entering Clady's empty manor, they couldn't help but look around in confusion. The other 5 special executors looked at Waiters. Waiters was the leader of the squad for this assignment. Let's go inside and take a look. Waiters said calmly. The 6 headed directly into the manor, but the inside of the manor was totally devoid of people as well. Linley, release my royal father. My royal father has already told you everything. A voice rang out from beyond the back gate. Instantly, the 6 special executors turned to look at the back courtyard. The 6 men's faces turned solemn. Linley. The 6 men exchanged glances. Linley. His name is on the red list. Kill on sight. The 6 special executors immediately hurried towards the back gate. The ecclesiastical tribunal had 2 special lists. One was known as the red list. The other was the black list. The people on the red list were to be killed on sight, but there was no need to expend too much effort on those targets. Those on the black list were to be killed no matter the cost. Actually, given Linley's future potential, the threat he could pose towards the Radiant Church in the future should have been enough for him to be placed on the black list. However, while the high levels of the Radiant Church were fleeing, they believed that since Linley was not a member of the church, the chances of him being able to discover that his mother had been killed by the Radiant Church was very low. Thus, they only placed Linley on the red list. The special executors of the ecclesiastical tribunal all possessed astonishing power. These 6 special executors were all warriors of the 9th rank. They stealthily began to surround Linley. In the little alleyway behind the back gate of Clady's manor, Linley's iron whip-like draconic tail was still wrapped tightly around Clady. "Release your royal father." Linley stared at Shaq. Letting out a cold laugh, he said, "I can release your father, but what of my mother and father? Although it was the Radiant Church which killed my mother, at least half of the responsibility lies with your father. And over half the responsibility for my father's death lies on your father as well." As Linley spoke, he began to exert more pressure with his tail. Crack, crack. All sorts of strange noises were emitting from Clady's body. Clady was in such agony from the constricting draconic tail that he began to try and struggle again. "Ah! Ah! Linley, kill me cleanly in one stroke." Clady moaned in agony. Crunch. Clady's two arms snapped off. Right now, Clady had been constricted so tightly by Linley that his formerly broad waist was now more slender than a woman's. Die. Linley looked at Clady, then exert a bit more force with his tail. Smush. Clady spat out a large amount of blood from his mouth, and his entire face turned red. While spitting the blood out, he was coughing non-stop, and some bits and pieces of his internal organs were coughed out as well. Right now, Clady had been ripped into two parts at the waist. Even his spine had been snapped apart. The only thing keeping his upper body and lower body connected was a bloody layer of skin. Clady let out a few more moans. Ah, ah, his entire face was red. A few seconds later, his breathing stopped, and his soul left this earth. But right now, Linley didn't feel any happiness or sense of accomplishment. The only thing he felt was a deep grief, a deep sadness. "Father! Mother! Can you see me?" Linley said to himself. Shaq, Kaiser, the princess, and the Wild Thunder Knights all stared at Linley. Many of them had hearts full of fear. After seeing how Clady had died, they didn't dare to try and avenge him. They could only hope that Linley would leave now. Linley's dark gold eyes glanced at everyone present. Cough. Shaq cleared his throat, beads of sweat appearing on his forehead. His father had died, but he didn't want to die as well. Linley's draconic tail swayed slightly, then he turned and began to walk away. "Bibi. Let's go," he called to Bibi. Just as Bibi, who was off to the side this entire time, was about to scurry away with him, Bibi suddenly paused, all the hair on his body sticking up. Right afterwards, Linley as well sensed sudden danger, which seemed to come from all directions. Whoosh! Several gusts of wind could be heard as 6 violet-robed figures appeared, surrounding Linley from 6 different points. Linley and Bibi were both trapped within their encirclement. 4 of these 6 were standing on nearby rooftops, while the other 2 were at each end of the alley Linley was in. There was no place Linley could flee to at all. Special executors from the ecclesiastical tribunal. Linley immediately understood who these people were upon seeing their uniform. Seeing this formation, Shaq and the Wild Thunder Knights all turned pale. These 6 special executors hadn't just encircled Linley and Bibi. They had also encircled Shaq and his men as well. "Milords, I am the second prince of the royal clan of Fenley. Please allow me to leave first," Shaq immediately begged. Kaiser recognized the special executors from their outfit. He also immediately said, "Milord special executors, I am Kaiser, and I am also a servant of the Radiant Church. May I leave first?" Kaiser knew very well about some of the special methods available to the special executors of the ecclesiastical tribunal. Given the current situation, he, Kaiser, wouldn't be of any use to them, and would actually serve to disrupt their actions. "Kaiser, you can leave," one of the violet-robed men standing at one of the ends of the alley said in a cold voice. "Yes." Kaiser immediately began running towards one of the ends of the alleyway. The 6 violet-robed men didn't block him at all, allowing him to flee past them. Kaiser was an expert of the kingdom of Fenley, true, but he was also a holy knight of the Radiant Church. "Milords, what about me?" Shak immediately said. "Milord's special executors." That princess immediately begged towards the special executors as well. But the 6 special executors didn't even glance at them. The 6 special executors were clear-headed. When Kaiser left, he was but one person, and a warrior of the 9th rank at that. Linley definitely wouldn't be able to find a chance to slip past. But if they allowed Shak and the others to leave as well, given Linley's current prowess, he definitely might be able to find a way to slip past at a critical moment. Linley stared coldly at the 6 of them. "You want to kill me?" Linley said calmly. He felt total confidence in himself. Even when surrounded by the attacks of that group of giant dragons, he was still able to flee and survive. To these 6 special executors, killing him and Bibi wouldn't be an easy affair. The protective scales on Linley's body were no joking matter. Those on the red list are to be killed on sight. The leader of the special executors laughed coldly. The 6 special executors stared fixedly at him and Bibi, ignoring everything else entirely. As high-level members of the ecclesiastical tribunal, they naturally knew that Linley was a dragon blood warrior. Dragon blood warriors were one of the supreme warriors. They didn't dare to look down upon him. "Oh! Kill on sight." Linley's draconic tail began to swing. Swish! Like a steel saber, Linley's draconic tail casually slashed across the ground, cutting a deep gouge into it. Linley's dark gold eyes were fixed on this group of people as well. Milord's special executors. Shak and his men were really terrified now. "Let's go." One of the Wild Thunder Knights let out a deep roar, and immediately, a group of knights charged en masse towards one of the alleyway exits. The remaining Wild Thunder Knights numbered amongst them more than 10 knights of the 8th rank. For them to charge en masse like this, even a combatant of the 9th rank would find it difficult to stop them. Linley's eyes lit up. Linley immediately charged towards the wall on his left. Ignoring the wall's existence, Linley slammed into it as though he were a large magical beast. Bam! Linley knocked the section of wall over while fleeing at high speed to the north. Whoosh! The bodies of those 6 special executors suddenly began to emit a hot, burning white light. The light from these 6 special executors was totally interconnected, forming a strange, glowing hexagram. Linley just happened to ram against one of the edges of the hexagram. Bam! Linley felt as though he had just been slapped by a violet tattooed bear. His entire body quivered as he was sent flying backwards. He remained surrounded by the 6 special executors. Ah! The bodies of those Wild Thunder Knights who struck against the glowing white hexagram all exploded, drenching the area with blood. Every single one of the Wild Thunder Knights who had touched the glowing white hexagram died. What is this? Linley was shocked. Linley, quick, do your best to escape. This should be one of the combination attack methods of the ecclesiastical tribunal. Douring Coward immediately recognized the danger that Linley and Bibi were now in. If they continued to be trapped in such a manner, it was very likely that Linley and Bibi would not be able to escape at all. Those 6 special executors charged forwards towards Linley and Bibi in a very practiced manner. And as they did, the area of movement within the hexagram began to shrink at an extremely fast rate. Ah! 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 Shak and the remaining knights who had not touched the glowing white hexagram were unable to dodge with the 6 special executors drawing closer and closer. One after another was forced to come into contact with the glowing white hexagram, and when they did, their bodies began to vibrate before exploding. In the blink of an eye, no one in Shak's party was left alive. But Linley and Bibi were trapped in an increasingly small, tight space. "Boss, that white thing seems really powerful. What should we do?" Bibi was frantic. Linley had both felt and could sense the power of this glowing white hexagram. When it had struck his body, he still felt extreme pain despite his defensive powers, and all the blood in his body had been agitated. "Bibi, you go down through the earth, I'll go up from the skies." Flee. Linley mentally directed Bibi. This black-scaled aberration, Linley, and his freak of a shadow mouse companion, Bibi, acted at almost the same time. One flew up into the sky like an arrow leaving the bow, while the other burrowed deep into the ground. Book 7, Heaven and Earth Turned Upside Down, Chapter 22, Passing Away. Ha! The 6 special executors simultaneously stomped the ground viciously, and suddenly the light around them penetrated the earth. Bibi, who had just burrowed into the earth, struck against the white light and was immediately knocked back. Whoosh! At the same time, the 6 special executors retreated at high speed, suddenly expanding the area within the glowing white hexagram. With each leap, Linley was usually only able to travel a few dozen meters to 100 meters at most. In the end, he still had to fall to the ground after all. As for the soaring technique, under the current conditions, he simply didn't have enough time to utter the incantations necessary to cast the soaring technique. Hey-ah! Bibi didn't dare to touch the glowing white hexagram the 6 special executors had created again. Bibi jumped up in the air as well. At this time, 5 of the special executors suddenly rose into the air as well. Of those 5, 4 rose to the same height in the air as Linley, while the last one rose above Linley. Whoa! One person was above him, 4 were around him, and 1 was underneath him. Glowing with white light, the 6 special executors had formed a totally airtight octahedron, keeping Linley and Bibi totally sealed in within. What the hell is this? Linley was rather stunned. Doering Cowart's voice sounded out in Linley's mind. This special combination attack of these special executors of the ecclesiastical tribunal consumes an enormous amount of light-style battle chi. But perhaps they have some secret treasures of the Radiant Temple on them. 5,000 years ago, the Radiant Temple didn't possess such mysterious, agile combination attacks. Even if they practiced the same type of battle chi, every person's battle chi would have fine, minute differences. To be able to totally combine battle chi like these 6 special executors were doing, to the point of even being able to transform their battle chi to dramatically increase its power, was virtually impossible. But the Radiant Temple had succeeded. Whoosh! Above, below, front and back, left and right. These 6 special executors flew towards Linley simultaneously at high speed. All 6 of them were wielding very thin, slender long swords. No place to dodge. Boss! Bibi was frantic. Linley mentally roared, Bibi, let's go all out against the one below us. If we can kill one of them, this formation will be broken. Got it? Linley and Bibi, man and magical beast, began to fall at high speeds, launching simultaneous attacks against the combatant of the 9th rank beneath them. But the combatant of the 9th rank didn't seem to be afraid at all. On the contrary, his lips quirked up slightly, a hint of disdain and mockery on his face. Through a Uum. The white light flowed at high speeds. The light dimmed from the other 5 special executors, while the light from the one below began to blaze like the sun. Launching off from the ground, this special executor chopped towards Linley and Bibi with his sword. Ah! Ignoring everything else, Linley struck out with his draconic tail, risking everything to try and constrict the special executor. Slash! The sword chopped against Linley's chest. Linley only felt an incomparable degree of pain, and his protective scales instantly began to crack. It felt as though an iron rod that had been heated until it was glowing white had been pressed against his skin, causing such pain that Linley's entire body began to twitch, but he continued to constrict the special executor with his draconic tail. Fresh blood began to flow from Linley's wound. The scales of the armored razorback WYRM weren't able to block this sword. That sword blow's power was only a bit weaker than the power of a saint-level expert. Doering Coward was astonished as well. After entering their combination attack formation, the attacks of the special executors could reach an incredible level of power. The Radiant Temple was confident that unless the opponent was a saint-level combatant, this formation attack would always be victorious. Ah! The draconic tail gripping the special executor suddenly came under assault by that powerful light-style battle chi. Linley felt enormous pain coming from his tail, but Linley continued to go all out, risking everything to constrict this opponent. Those dark golden eyes stared fixedly at the special executor. Humph! The special executor let out a cold laugh. Bam! White light exploded forth from the special executor, and Linley's draconic tail uncontrollably slackened. Linley's constrictive power simply wasn't able to overcome the opponent's counterattack. At this time, the other 5 special executors came charging at Linley as well. Boss! BB kicked off from Linley's shoulders, charging directly towards those 5 special executors. But on his very first attack, BB was struck simultaneously by all 5 swords, and his body was knocked back downwards. BB! Linley said worriedly. Boss, I'm fine. BB flipped to his feet, but a hint of blood could be seen on his firm, tough fur. However, BB's defense really was remarkably powerful. He barely suffered any damage to his skin and fur. These 6 special executors stared at BB in astonishment. Too monstrous. Even that hadn't been able to pierce the skin of this shadow mouse. As far as the special executors were concerned, even magical beasts of the 9th rank should have their defensive armor and skin be pierced by that blow. Even someone with defense as monstrously powerful as Linley saw the scales over his chest crack and split from a single blow. The target is Linley. The 6 of them knew that killing this monster of a shadow mouse would probably force them to use quite some effort, but killing Linley would be much easier. A single sword had been able to penetrate his defenses. Thus, a few sword strikes should be enough to kill him. What on earth is going on? Their light-style battle chi seems to be limitless. Linley mentally roared with fury, as he swept his claws to attack the special executors who were charging towards him. Scree! BB's piercing screech rang out as well. Light wrapped around their bodies, the 6 special executors did a pincer attack against Linley and BB, while Linley and BB used all their force to try and counterattack. Bam! A wild series of attacks. Both sides totally ignored their defense, only focusing on attacking. The 6 special executors retreated at high speed. More than half of Linley's black scales were shattered now, revealing multiple wounds beneath. Fresh blood oozed out past the scales, and even the scales on Linley's tail were shattered. Linley wasn't able to suppress the fresh blood which had risen to his throat, and he vomited it out. Their defense, Linley was truly angry and frantic now. He had finally met people whose defensive powers were even greater than his own. These 6 special executors were using light-style battle chi in an extravagantly wasteful manner. Their combination formation attacks gave them both terrifying offense as well as astonishing defense. Linley's attack hadn't managed to wound them at all. Boss, are you okay? BB said in shock and fright. Those beady eyes of him stared at Linley with concern. BB was in much better shape than Linley. The primary target of those 6 special executors had been Linley. In addition, BB's defense was even more monstrous than Linley's. Once again, only a hint of blood could be seen on BB's fur. Fine. Linley wiped the blood from his mouth. That was the first attack. One of the violet-robed special executors standing on a distant rooftop said calmly, "Your defense isn't bad. Let's see how many of our formation attacks you can take." "Waiters, let's not waste time." One of the other special executors also standing on a rooftop said coldly. "Move." The special executor shouted in a loud voice. Many of the buildings nearby had toppled, and the battle aroused the interest of a large number of powerful combatants, who were watching from afar. But seeing such a large-scale, intense battle, they didn't dare draw too near. The aura of that powerful light-style battle chi alone filled them with dread. Swish! The 6 special executors moved at the same time, transforming into 6 streaks of white light that flew towards Linley. Surrounded on all sides by the walls of light, Linley had nowhere to run. Linley ground his teeth. Ray-a-arg. Linley let out an angry howl, then pulled out the adamantine heavy sword from his back, wildly chopping it towards the 6 special executors. Boom! Linley's adamantine heavy sword collided viciously against a special executor, who didn't even attempt to dodge. That special executor suddenly felt a terrifying force passing towards him. HRM. The violet-robed special executor was knocked flying backwards by the blow, but under the protection of that light-style battle chi, he still didn't suffer any major injuries. Only a heavy sword such as this could allow the astonishing power of a dragon blood warrior to be put on full display. Slash. The other 5 swords continued to chop at Linley's body. Linley used his claws, his tail, and the spikes on his body to wildly attack, and the 5 special executors once more flew backwards. Linley fell to one knee. The majority of the scales on Linley's body were shattered now, and that wound on his chest had suffered yet another slash. The wound was so deep that Linley's bones could be seen, and it was rapidly oozing blood. However, the Dragon Blood Warrior's powerful bloodline gave Linley an extremely fast recovery. Linley's muscles were constantly rippling and stretching out, try to once more mend themselves and stitch themselves back together. This wound, however, was simply too severe. Even Linley's bloodline only resulted in the wound growing stronger. The loss of a large amount of blood, however, was causing Linley to grow dizzy. The next one will be the one that kills you. One of the 6 special executors said arrogantly. Filled with fear, BB crouched next to Linley. Both Linley and BB felt a sense of despair. Linley angrily shook his head, forcing himself to try and focus a little. But he had lost too much blood, and even Linley's vision had grown slightly blurred. But right at this moment, a magical, illusory ray of light shone forth from the coiling dragon ring, transforming into an old man with white robes, a white beard, and white hair. Grandpa Douring. Linley was startled. He didn't understand why Douring Coward had appeared all of a sudden. Douring Coward looked exactly the way he did when Linley had first encountered him. A little smile on his face, Douring Coward gently rubbed Linley on the head. Linley, in the future, you'll have to rely on yourself. Douring Coward said, a fond smile on his face. Grandpa Douring, what are you? Linley was stunned. Douring Coward's spirit suddenly rose into the air. Hovering a meter above the ground, he spread his hands wide. A terrifyingly powerful burst of spiritual energy suddenly erupted forth from Douring Coward. Right now, Douring Coward felt extremely calm and at peace. In the past, when I lived in the Poent Empire, my life was a life of training and slaughter. In the Poent Empire, I was extremely arrogant and a difficult person to get close to. I had no children and no grandchildren. But after having spent 5,000 years in the coiling dragon ring, my temperament has changed. And then, I met you, Linley. Hovering in the air, Douring Coward was still gazing at Linley. Grandpa Douring, what are you going to do? Linley had a terrible premonition. I've watched you grow up and become mature, one step at a time. In my heart, I felt very proud of your successes. I've even come to consider you as my own grandson. The amount of spiritual energy Douring Coward was emitting grew even greater. The amount of spiritual energy was so high that aside from powerful combatants such as Linley and the 6 special executors, even those warriors watching the battle from far away could sense it. All of the 6 special executors were shocked and alarmed. Linley, don't be sad. In truth, trapped as I am within this coiling dragon ring, I don't have much of a future. Let this, then, be one final demonstration of my power. Douring Coward's smile became all the more brilliant. But Linley was now shaking with terror. What is going on? The 6 special executors were beginning to be genuinely frightened. That vortex of spiritual energy was simply too powerful, so powerful that they too were beginning to quake with fear. The power unleashed when a peak stage saint-level combatant was igniting the spiritual energy present in his very soul was incomparably more powerful than the power which even a peak stage saint-level combatant normally possessed. Whoosh! All of the earth elemental essence around the entire city of Hesse suddenly flowed towards Doering Coward at high speed. Bound by Doering Coward's terrifyingly powerful spiritual energy, all of the earth elemental essence began to coalesce. No mage force. This was a spell that relied solely on spiritual energy to control the earth elemental essence. Under normal conditions, this would render the attack power of the earth spell to be very weak. But the spell which Doering Coward was now casting was so powerful that one could only shiver in terror. Heavenly meteors descent. Doering Coward's spirit had begun to grow blurry, but his voice remained as cold and calm as that of a celestial spirit. 6 enormous earth-colored meteors fell forth from the sky, smashing towards those 6 special executors. Swoosh! Those 6 gigantic meteors formed purely from earth elemental essence, each the size of a house, smashed towards the 6 men at such a high speed that it seemed as though they were tearing through space itself. Those 6 special executors fled in terror. But those 6 meteors only chased after them. Linley. Doering Coward looked at Linley. Goodbye. Linley looked up at Grandpa Doering, with his white beard, white hair, and white robe. Remember this. Live well. Doering Coward's face suddenly blossomed into his trademark smile, and then his now translucent spirit disappeared, like smoke being blown away by the wind. Linley opened his mouth, but felt as though no words could come from his throat. His tears began to uncontrollably roll down his face. Ah, ah. As though he were mute and incapable of speech, Linley howled to the heavens, and his tears came pouring down. Book 7, Heaven and Earth Turned Upside Down, Chapter 23, Crazed. Bam. 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 The 6 giant meteors smashed down viciously towards those 6 special executors. The 6 special executors all used their hands to rip the ground apart beneath them and try to tunnel downwards. Those 6 giant meteors struck the ground, causing the earth to shake furiously with colossal booms, as though giant waves of thunder were suddenly emanating from the ground. Boom! 6 massive, deep gouges appeared in the earth, each of them around 10 meters wide. The tremendous shock waves spread out in all directions, and the earth itself began to buckle and roil about, toppling houses and snapping trees in every which way. Within a circular area with a circumference of several hundred meters, everything was turned to dust. This terrifying explosive boom caused the entirety of Hesse City to take notice. Whether it was the ascetics who had just stepped out of the gates of Hesse City, or the men of the Dawson conglomerate, or other powerful experts, everyone felt the vibrations coming from this place. The roiling waves of force reached Linley as well, but Linley only stood there like an idiot, not moving at all. He allowed the waves of force to buffet him as they pleased. Linley just stood there like an idiot, his tears flowing down without stopping. Ah, 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 Linley seemed to have forgotten how to speak, and his entire body trembled with panic and heartbreak as he roared into the sky. Linley fell to his knees. A sense of utter heartbreak, of his heart being ripped to shreds, consumed Linley. Linley's mind suddenly began to swim with images of him and Doering Coward together. That first time he had seen that ray of light transform into an old man with white robes, white beard, and white hair. The child Linley had shouted in astonishment, "You, who are you?" "Hello, kiddo. My name is Doering Coward. I am a saint-level Grand Magus of the Poent Empire." That was the first time Doering Coward had interacted with Linley. "Grandpa Doering, why aren't you talking? How is the strength of my affinity for Earth Elemental Essence?" The first time Linley had been tested for his talent as a magus. "Good. Extremely good. Your affinity for Earth Elemental Essence is extremely high." Doering Coward's face was wreathed in smiles. "Based on what I know, Only perhaps 1 in 1,000 magi would have as strong an affinity for earth elemental essence as you. Truly. Doering Coward's praise had caused child Linley to be unspeakably excited. A saint-level Grand Magus of the era of the Poent Empire. A young child. And so, under the tutelage of this Grand Magus of the Poent Empire, the child embarked on the road to being a magus. Stone sculpting using the straight chisel school method. Training within the mountain range of magical beasts. Under the tutelage of the experienced Doering Coward, Linley had progressed and matured at an astonishing rate. But when Linley had become the center of attention for everyone, no one knew that behind him stood the spirit of a saint-level Grand Magus of the era of the Poent Empire. Linley. In the future, you'll have to rely on yourself. Grandpa Doering had fondly rubbed Linley's head one last time. After casting that world-shaking forbidden spell, Heavenly Meteor's Descent, Grandpa Doering had faded away. Linley. Goodbye. Remember this. Live well. Linley's mind swam with images of the time he had spent with his Grandpa Doering. That kindly, forbearing old man who had taught Linley so much, had long since become someone whom Linley couldn't bear to be apart from. No, no. Linley shook his head repeatedly. He wasn't willing to believe it. Grandpa Doering had truly passed away. What's more, his very soul had dissipated upon his death. Impossible. Grandpa Doering, come out. Come out. Linley stared at the coiling dragon ring, howling non-stop at first, before his words took on begging tones as his tears splashed against his ice-cold scales. Blood continued to leak out of Linley's body, but Linley didn't feel anything at all. Grandpa Doering. Linley so dearly hoped that once more, that ray of white light would shine forth from the coiling dragon ring and transform into the white-bearded, white-haired, white-robed Grandpa Doering. Linley simply couldn't believe that Grandpa Doering had died, just like that. Never to be by his side again. He had been together with Grandpa Doering since he was a child. Since then, Linley had never been separated from Grandpa Doering. Never. In the depths of his heart, Linley had truly become accustomed long ago to Grandpa Doering's presence. Even when Linley had been imprisoned within the Radiant Temple, he hadn't felt as alone or as helpless as he did now. His heart had always been steady, because behind him, he had the support of Grandpa Doering. But now, Grandpa Doering had left forever. Forever. Why? Why? Linley's voice was shaking. Heaven, first my mother died, then my father died. Why? Why did you have to take even Grandpa Doering away as well? Why? Linley raised his head, howling towards the heavens. His voice echoed in the sky. Ah, ah. Linley fell to his knees, powerless. He began to sob madly, but no matter how hard Linley cried, that kindly old man would never appear again. He had died and left forever. Grandpa Doering. Linley felt more feeble and fragile than he ever had before. It was a spiritual fragility. No father. No mother. And now, even Grandpa Doering, who had always been by his side, had left. The only one left by Linley's side was Bibi, who had never even known about Grandpa Doering's existence. Boss. Hey, Linley, boss. Bibi nudged Linley, somewhat frightened. Linley turned his head to look at Bibi. Bibi. Linley suddenly pulled Bibi into his arms. Boss, just now, you were calling out for a Grandpa Doering. Who is Grandpa Doering? Just now, I sensed a terrifying spiritual energy burst. What was that? Bibi was totally baffled. Linley's heart was shot through with agony once more upon hearing Grandpa Doering's name. He lowered his head to look at the coiling dragon ring on his finger. But, Grandpa Doering would never come out from it again. Rustle. Suddenly, a series of extremely light sounds could be heard. Linley turned his head to look. Within the giant craters created by the meteors, a violet-robed figure was struggling to crawl out. Not only him. The other 5 men were also slowly struggling to crawl out as well. Heavenly Meteor's Descent, an Earth-style forbidden spell. If a saint-level Grand Magus were to use this spell, the 6 of them would have been dead without a doubt. But Douring Coward was a saint-level Grand Magus who didn't have a single shred of mage force. Based on the laws of magic, mage force was the generals commanding the army of soldiers known as elemental essence. Through mage force, spiritual energy was able to command these soldiers to form powerful magical spells. What Douring Coward had done was to consume the spiritual energy within his very soul, using this powerful burst of spiritual energy to directly control the elemental essences and execute the forbidden spell, Heavenly Meteor's Descent. But because he had no mage force, even though he consumed all of his own spiritual energy, the power of Douring Coward's spell was only 10%, 20% of a normal Heavenly Meteor's Descent. Despite that though, even 10% to 20% of the power of a forbidden spell had smashed those 6 special executors to the brink of death. Watching those 6 violet-robed figures crawl out, Linley's heart was suddenly filled with unbridled, boundless, unquenchable rage. Ah! With a scream, Linley charged like a bolt of lightning towards one of the violet-robed figures. The special executor, seeing Linley charge towards him, was so terrified that his eyes turned as round as the moon. Ah! Exerting force with his arms, Linley ripped the special executor into 2 halves with his bare hands. Die! Linley physically ripped off the head of another special executor. Arg! Linley's sharp claws pierced into the chest of a 3rd special executor, ripping his heart out and crushing it to pieces with his claws. Go die! Linley latched onto the throat of the 4th special executor with his teeth, ripping his throat out. He wanted to eat their flesh and drink their blood. Ah! Linley's figure suddenly appeared next to the 5th special executor. The heavily wounded special executor, unable to defend himself, could only watch in terror as Linley ripped him apart into 2 pieces by his legs. As for the 6th special executor, the heavily wounded 6th special executor, upon seeing the terrifying scene before him, saw Linley charge towards him like a demon from the infernal realm. He was so terrified that his body began to shake, and then he collapsed dead from fear. Although the 6th special executor was already dead, Linley still smashed a vicious punch at his head, exploding it. Watching this, BB was somewhat frightened. The warriors watching from far away had been scared stupid as well. They had never imagined that a human could be so vicious, so brutal, so terrifying. This was especially true because of how Linley currently appeared. His body was covered in broken scales, and blood dyed his entire form red. Even his dark gold eyes were dimly flashing red. Boss, what's wrong? BB was worried. After Linley had brutally killed all 6 special executors, he suddenly sat down on the ground, his energy gone. He sat there, staring into nothing, with no clue as to what he was thinking. Boss! BB pushed Linley frantically. Linley suddenly raised his head, but he was unable to restrain his tears from coming out again. He then lowered his head, burying it against his legs and beginning to cry once more. Those 6 giant meteors had turned the entire area around for hundreds of meters into rubble. Those 6 violet-robed men had all been killed by that demonic freak. But then, that demonic freak suddenly put his head against his legs and began to sob. There were nearly 10,000 onlookers now, watching from hundreds of meters away. None of these people could understand what they were seeing. That demon is crying. All of them were astonished. That demon seems really sad. A young person said uncertainly to a nearby friend of his. That friend started, then nodded slowly. None of the onlookers moved any closer. They had seen the terrifying scene of just moments ago. Even the combatants of the 8th rank knew exactly how much stronger this person in front of them was. The demon is crying. Yale, George, and Reynolds had just gotten here, having traveled quite far. Hearing these words, they all started. Out of the way! Out of the way! Yale shouted angrily. Immediately, the guards of the Dawson conglomerate began to push aside the various onlookers. Yale, George, and Reynolds ran frantically towards the center of the battlefield. But upon reaching the epicenter, all of them were stunned. Everything within several hundred meters had been turned to rubble. Looking at the 6 craters, one could imagine how terrifyingly powerful those 6 giant meteors had been. And just looking at the corpses of those 6 men, one could imagine how brutal the person who had killed them was. The demon's body, covered with broken scales, was sitting there, sobbing. Upon seeing Bibi by the side of the demon, and that adamantine heavy sword which had been tossed to the ground, Yale and the others became all the more certain that this was Linley. Third bro. Yale, George, and Reynolds immediately rushed over. By now, Monroe Dawson had arrived as well. He immediately ordered his subordinates, "Quick, dispose of those 6 corpses, then leave immediately. Don't let anyone know that the Dawson conglomerate had anything to do with this." As he spoke, Monroe Dawson immediately left as well. Third bro. Yale, George, and Reynolds all called out with worry. Back during Linley's assassination attempt on Clady at Fenley City, Yale had already guessed that Linley was capable of transforming into a dragon blood warrior. He had informed Reynolds and George as well. And now, seeing Bibi as well as the discarded adamantine heavy sword, they naturally were certain that this was Linley. Linley's body shook slightly. Raising his head and glancing besides himself, Linley saw Yale, George, and Reynolds. Linley finally spoke. "You guys. Let's go, quick." Yale immediately urged. "You just killed special executors. If the Radiant Church finds out, it'll be a disaster for you." Yale immediately helped Linley up. Linley allowed himself to be raised to his feet. "Bibi. Let's go." Linley hugged Bibi, then headed out. Yale was startled, because he noticed that Linley didn't pay any attention at all to his adamantine heavy sword. He couldn't help but call out urgently, "Third bro, your heavy sword. Heavy sword." Linley turned his head. After a moment, he seemed to understand, and he walked over, picking his heavy sword up. Just then, the subordinates of the Dawson conglomerate arrived as well, and they quickly disposed of those 6 violet-robed special executors' corpses. "What's wrong with third bro?" George said quietly to Yale and Reynolds. Yale shook his head as well, confused. "No idea. Bibi seems to be fine as well." "Why then does it seem as though third bro just suffered a worse blow than that time when he had his heart broken? He seems so downcast that it is like he has lost his soul." Linley allowed the Dawson conglomerate's men to lead him away, as they crept away via small alleyways and arrived at a mysterious residence. Book 7, Heaven and Earth Turned Upside Down, Chapter 24, Stillness. Within the dark, quiet residence, there was only Reynolds, Yale, George, a few dozen female attendants, and a few dozen guards. All of them were here for Linley. Beneath branches of hanging grapes, George, Yale, and Reynolds were standing around a stone desk. "Boss Yale. What do you think is going on with third bro?" Reynolds' face was filled with confusion as he said helplessly. Yale shook his head. "I don't know either. It's been 10 days since third bro has come here, and in these past 10 days, third bro hasn't had any of his usual energy. He isn't even training, nor does he joke around and laugh with us anymore. He's always off by himself." George nodded as well. In the past, no matter what happened, third bro wouldn't stop his training. But now he seems to have transformed into a totally different person. So who can tell me what exactly is going on with third bro? Reynolds gnashed his teeth. "It would be great if I knew." Yale sighed resignedly. The thing which hurt their heads the most was that they had no idea what had caused Linley to become like this. He no longer trained, nor did he joke around with the three of them. He was always off by himself, looking as though he had lost his soul. He had become like this for no apparent reason whatsoever. As the dear brothers of Linley, how could they not be worried? Third bro must have suffered some sort of tremendous shock. Yale sighed quietly. George and Reynolds were all startled for a moment, then they fell silent. They couldn't help but think back to what they had seen that day. Thousands of observers surrounding a circular area where everything for hundreds of meters around had been reduced to rubble. Within that disaster area, those 6 astonishingly deep craters and fallen meteors. Linley, in full dragon form, had brutally massacred those 6 special executors, then sat down and began to cry. He had been sobbing like a child. I've never seen Third bro this heartbroken, this fragile. Yale said in a low voice. George nodded as well. Third bro is very tough. Even when he suffered heartbreak from breaking up with Alice, after completing the awakening from the dream sculpture, he headed directly for the mountain range of magical beasts to engage in more training. Right. Even when his father died, Third bro had managed to endure and hold on. But this time, Reynolds simply couldn't understand. They were all certain that their beloved bro was in a fragile state right now, but none of them could find a reason why. Next to a murmuring creek in the back courtyard of the residence, Linley was sitting on top of a decorative polished stone. He stared at the creek, not moving. Bibi was standing on the stone as well, right next to Linley. Utter silence. The only sound that could be heard was the murmurs of the flowing water. Although Linley's eyes were aimed at the creek, his thoughts were still with Grandpa Douring and the time they had spent together. How he had played around with Grandpa Douring as a child. How Grandpa Douring had strictly supervised and trained him as a young man. In the mountain range of magical beasts, how Grandpa Douring had lectured him time and time again to be careful without growing tired of it. With each memory swimming to the surface, Linley felt his heart grow still. After my father died, I thought that I was now very lonely. But I didn't realize that in reality, I was very fortunate. No matter what happened, Grandpa Douring was always behind me, supporting me, consoling me, encouraging me, reminding me. But why didn't I realize this in the past? Why didn't I treasure the time I had spent together with Grandpa Douring? Linley's heart was filled with agony. Grandpa Douring had never made any excessive requests of him, but he had never considered about how Grandpa Douring had felt. He hadn't truly valued the time he had spent with Grandpa Douring. Perhaps subconsciously, he had believed that Grandpa Douring would forever be with him within the coiling dragon ring. Coiling dragon ring? Grandpa Douring was always inside the coiling dragon ring by himself. It must have been very painful and miserable for him to always be alone in there. Grandpa Douring probably also hoped that I would chat with him often, right? Only now did Linley think of these things. But in the past, Linley usually would only ask for Grandpa Douring's advice when he met with some insurmountable difficulties. He would very rarely actively seek out Grandpa Douring just to chat. He only took, without giving back. Why is it that only after I have lost, that I now understand how to cherish? Linley's body began to tremble. How he hoped that Grandpa Douring would return and would be by his side again. Unfortunately, this was impossible. Grandpa Douring was dead. Dead and gone forever. Linley could feel his heart clenching, as though it were contorting. His entire body was convulsing with pain. But there wasn't a hint of pain on Linley's face. Deep in Linley's heart, he even began to think. If he could just die now from the pain, then he would have escaped from it all. Boss. Bibi's voice rang out in Linley's head. Linley turned to look at Bibi. Bibi's beady little black eyes were staring at Linley, a look of concern in them. You are thinking about that Grandpa Douring again. Even Bibi only learned after Douring Coward's death that Linley previously had a ghost saint level Grand Magus by his side. Linley nodded. BB mentally spoke to Linley. Boss, can you tell me all about that Grandpa Dou ring? Looking at BB, Linley nodded slightly, then reached out and held BB in his arms, hugging him. He began to tell BB all about Dou ring coward. That year, I was 8 years old. There were 2 saint-level combatants who had appeared at Wushan Township. Standing outside the gate to the back courtyard, Reynolds and the others quietly watched as Linley hugged BB while seated on that smooth, polished decorative stone. I feel extremely miserable myself, seeing third bro like this. Reynolds sighed softly. Yale and George were both silent. We have to think of something. George's eyes suddenly sharpened, became fierce. No matter what, we can't let third bro just collapse like this. Yale and Reynolds both nodded. Second bro, do you have any ideas? Reynolds and Yale looked at George. George said, we have no idea what has caused third bro to become like this. But there are a few things that we can extrapolate. George said gravely, third bro's clan was the Dragon Blood Warrior clan. As a clan which once dominated the entire world, the members of the clan naturally wished to revive their clan to their former glory. Yale's eyes lit up. Right. Third bro values his clan highly. For the sake of acquiring his ancestral heirloom, the Warblade Slaughterer, he was even willing to auction off Awakening from the Dream. Exactly. George nodded. My theory is, the reason why third bro was always so hard on himself in training was because he had something important to him that was driving him. Most likely, restoring his clan to its former glory was that motivating impulse. Third bro has worked hard for so many years now. He definitely wouldn't give up that easily. We have to use this to agitate and encourage him. Agitate him? Would that work? Yale was a bit suspicious. George said helplessly, do we have a better method of helping him? We'll use this method. Reynolds harumphed. I can't stand watching third bro continue to act like this any longer. Let's go. The 3 of us will go talk with him. Let's see what exactly is going on. Fourth bro, let second bro do the talking. The more you talk, the more you screw things up. Yale reproved. Knowing his own temperament, Reynolds nodded. George, Yale, and Reynolds looked at each other, then walked towards Linley. After listening to Linley's story, BB was quiet as well. He was also very heartsick for Dou ring coward's death. Suddenly, BB felt people approaching them from behind. He leaped out of Linley's arms and looked towards that direction. It was Yale, George, and Reynolds. But right now, having just finished the tale of Grandpa Dou ring, Linley was lost in his memories once more, and didn't even realize that people were approaching him. Yale, George, and Reynolds glanced at each other, all sighing internally. Linley was an expert. Normally, Linley probably would have noticed the 3 of them before they had even entered the courtyard. But now, all 3 of them were right behind Linley, and yet Linley didn't react at all. Third bro. Yale spoke. Linley trembled, then slightly turned his head to look at the 3 of them. His eyes were very calm. You guys came. After speaking, Linley turned his head back towards the creek, continuing to stare at the water. Yale, George, and Reynolds immediately walked to stand next to the boulder Linley was sitting on. Third bro. Yale suddenly grabbed Linley by his shoulders, forcing Linley to look at him. Third bro, do you remember those things which had happened at the Ernst Institute, and what you often said to me? Forgot. Linley said calmly. Yale stared. Forgot. Third bro, you often put me down, saying that I don't work hard or train hard, and that in our dorm, I would be the weakest out of us 4, despite physically being the largest. Back when the 4 of them were dorm mates, naturally they would often joke with each other. But Linley remained silent. George looked at Yale, nodding slightly. Yale released Linley's shoulders, and then George walked in front of Linley, saying solemnly, Third bro. I want to ask you. You have trained so bitterly for all these years. What was it all for? Linley started. He couldn't help but think about how he had been focused on training, ever since he was young. For the clan. Linley finally responded. Next to him, a hint of delight appeared on the faces of Yale and Reynolds. George immediately said, then let me ask you this. As you are now, are you behaving responsibly towards your clan? Looking at George, Linley smiled bitterly. In a dreary, desolate voice, he said, my father's dead. My mother's dead. Tell me. What's the point of working hard on behalf of the clan? Linley rose to his feet, walking towards the back courtyard. Yale, George, and Reynolds all stared at Linley's back, then exchanged stunned looks. Pointless. Everyone is dead. What's the point of doing my best? Linley said in a desolate, mournful voice before he disappeared past the door. 15 days. Linley had stayed within the residence for 15 days. During these 15 days, Yale and the others had tried everything they could think of, but no matter what they did, Linley remained as he had. George, Reynolds, and Yale were seated together, drinking unhappily. What should we do? What exactly should we do? We can't just watch as third bro drowns in this abyss of despair. Reynolds angrily smashed the wine cup against the floor. Yale and George both shook their heads as well. These past few days, they had tried everything they could. They also asked Linley what had caused him to become like this, but Linley didn't say a word, remaining silent. What could they do? When I see how silent third bro is, I really worry about him. My heart hurts. Third bro, alas, Yale grabbed the bottle of wine and poured it directly into his mouth, drinking half of it at a swig. They had grown up alongside Linley, and their love for each other was even greater than that between real brothers. How could they just watch as Linley collapsed like this? Seated on a chair within his room, Linley stared at the coiling dragon ring on his hand. Linley could clearly recollect how Grandpa Douring looked each time he came out of the ring. But that scene would never, ever play out again. On Linley's other hand, he was wearing a second ring, an interspatial ring. After Clady had died, the ring and its contents had become items without an owner. When he had been engaging in battle against the 6 special executors, the blood from Linley's body had covered the ring long ago, and it naturally had become personalized and bound to him. But these past 15 days, Linley hadn't so much as glanced at this interspatial ring or its contents. His mind was elsewhere. Even when he didn't actively dwell on it, his thoughts would always turn to scenes of him together with Grandpa Douring. How Grandpa Douring had looked when stroking his beard, or how he had looked when he was sternly instructing Linley. All sorts of memories, all of them so clear and vivid. Why? Why? Even Grandpa Douring, the last person I had, was taken away. After having lost Grandpa Douring, Linley had also lost his strongest source of support. He felt more fragile and more lonely than he ever had before. Linley tightly held Bibi in his arms. In that quiet little room, he continued to sit there, alone. Book 7, Heaven and Earth Turned Upside Down, Chapter 25, Departure. At the borders of the Kingdom of Hesse was an army numbering over 800,000 soldiers. On a vast expanse of ground, military camps dotted the land like a series of mountain ranges, limitless and without end. This enormous army was, however, quite organized. But in front of the military camp, there was a vast expanse of empty land. Hey, Uncle Rand Lantee. If the army of magical beasts attack, will we be able to hold? An armored young man who looked to be in 16 or 17 said in a soft voice. Next to him was a muscular, bearded man. Removing a small flagon of liquor from his pouch, he took a small swig, then laughed loudly. Relax. This time, in addition to the elite troops of our Kingdom of Hesse, the Knights of the Radiant Temple have been sent by the Radiant Church, along with many Lord Magi. Don't worry. The spells of Magi are quite powerful. Right. This was the young man's first battle. Hearing the words of the veteran, he felt slightly steadier. But that muscular man was sighing to himself inside. Because he, in fact, had seen how vicious and powerful magical beasts were. If thousands or tens of thousands of magical beasts charged towards them, the only way humanity would be able to survive was by paying a price in blood. Roar. Suddenly, a low growl could be heard coming from an extremely far distance. Uncle Rand, I think I heard something. The young man was growing nervous. It's fine. Rand said loudly, but suddenly, Rand squinted and looked to the south. Atop that barren, empty plain, a countless number of thickly clustered dots could be seen. Magical beasts. A horde of magical beasts. From another part of the military camp, a shrill cry rang out. Instantly, the entire military camp began to move. From the highest-ranking generals to the lowest-level soldiers, everyone heightened their vigilance. The entire 800,000-man army was preparing to do battle. So many. Many human soldiers, upon seeing the horde of magical beasts off in the distance, couldn't help but suck in a cold breath. From far away, countless vampiric iron bulls had formed into a series of formation lines. Their muscles knotted, they were charging towards the humans at high speed. There was well over 10,000 vampiric iron bulls. Rumble, rumble. The vampiric iron bulls charged wildly, causing the very ground to shake. The eyes of each and every vampiric iron bull had turned red, and their bodies were emitting flames. They looked like a sea of fire. The shaking earth. The endless sea of flame. Swish. 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 Suddenly, the sky became filled with many translucent, azure-colored javelins. These javelins fell down upon the vampiric iron bulls like the rain. The Lord Magi. Many human soldiers exulted. Puchin. Every single javelin possessed astonishing power. As one of the water style's pure water element spells, they were extremely powerful against fire-type magical beasts. These icy javelins descended, either piercing into the ground or into the bodies of the vampiric iron bulls. Puchin. Some of the icy javelins penetrated directly through the internal organs of the vampiric iron bulls, who roared in fury, ran a few steps more, then collapsed. One vampiric iron bull after another died, but the vast majority of them continued to charge forward. Even if they had suffered some light injuries, they would only grow more furious. Fresh blood stained the ground. Snored. The vampiric iron bulls roared angrily. Archers. Ready, fire. The officers shouted loudly. Instantly. The skies were filled with countless arrows. The thickly clustered arrows arced down from the heavens in a dense wave. One sharp arrow after another struck the vampiric iron bulls, but their tough, knotted muscles easily deflected many of the arrows. The tactics which human armies used against other human armies wasn't necessarily effective against magical beasts. Pikemen, formations. One heavily armored and thickly muscled warrior after another strode forward, all holding steel pikes assuming a defensive formation. They quietly awaited the onslaught of the vampiric iron bulls. Snowboard. The red-eyed vampiric iron bulls charged forward. Countless steel pikes were there to welcome the vampiric iron bulls, but the vampiric iron bulls only lowered their horns and continued to charge forward while roaring. Like a solid flood, they slammed viciously against the pikes. Puk I. The vampiric iron bulls were skewered by those steel pikes. The people capable of wielding steel pikes were all at least warriors of the third rank. In addition, all of the pikemen were mutually supporting each other in their bristling pike formation, borrowing and lending strength as needed. The first wave of vampiric iron bulls were not able to break this defensive line. But behind them, more vampiric iron bulls continued to charge. The battle between the army of magical beasts and the army of men was extremely fierce. The army of beasts was composed of more than just vampiric iron bulls. There were also packs of wind wolves, and also elite prides of the even more terrifying fire lions. There were also landworms, velocidragons, and more. But the human army wasn't weak either. In addition to the ordinary common soldiers, they also possessed some truly powerful magi who hadn't yet made their moves. In addition, the Radiant Church had also sent a number of magi of the 7th, 8th, and even 9th ranks. There was also a division of elite knights of the Radiant Temple. The battle raged for 3 days, and in the end, the human army was forced to retreat. In just 3 days, the human side had lost over 300,000 soldiers, and the number of wounded was even more staggering. But the magical beast's army had suffered high casualties as well. However, both armies seemed to have a tacit understanding, as neither side made use of their saint-level combatants. The saint-level combatants only watched from afar, and didn't act. Hess City was in a state of chaos. This battle at the border had resulted in the human army retreating 100 kilometers at once. They were now extremely close to Hess City, and many of the people within Hess City had made the decision to evacuate. Hess City. The quiet manor where Linley was residing. Yale, we're leaving immediately. Quick. Don't waste any more time. Monroe Dawson shouted. I expect that the human army won't be able to hold for many more days. The flames of war are about to engulf Hess City. Yale nodded. Understood, father. But third bro, Yale was still concerned about Linley. George and Reynolds, by Yale's side, were both worried as well. Monroe Dawson frowned. How about this? You go try to persuade him one final time. No matter what though, we must leave tonight. After he spoke, Monroe Dawson turned and left. Yale, George, and Reynolds looked at each other. Finally, the three of them headed in the direction of Linley's room. As soon as they entered the rear courtyard, they saw Linley sitting on a chair next to a stone table, calmly staring at the straight chisel in his hand. Seeing this, Yale, George, and Reynolds didn't feel happy or excited at all. For the sake of wanting to help Linley wake up, they would often place the straight chisel there, along with sculptures. But Linley didn't seem to have any desire at all to sculpt. Each time he saw the chisel, he would think back to how Grandpa Doering had painstakingly trained him to sculpt. He could still remember how proud and majestic Grandpa Doering had looked when he had first imparted to Linley the secrets of the straight chisel school. At that moment, Grandpa Doering really had the regal bearing of a grandmaster. Third bro. Yale walked directly over to him. Linley raised his head to look at Yale. A smile formed on his face, but he said nothing. Third bro, the army of magical beasts is about to break through the borders. The human side has already been forced to retreat 100 kilometers. It's only a matter of time before they break into Hess City. We have to leave. Yale said solemnly. Leave? Linley was briefly startled. Oh. Got it? Seeing how Linley was acting, Reynolds, the most hot-tempered of the four, grabbed Linley by his clothes. Staring straight into Linley's eyes, he angrily shouted, Third bro, what the hell is wrong with you? Speak. Why have you become like this? The person whom I, Reynolds, admire most in this world is you. I often brag to others about you. But now, look at yourself. Look at what you have become. Admire me. Linley said self-mockingly. Admire what? I heard Boss Yale say that because of the enmity between you and Clady, you were willing to throw away everything to be able to kill him. You dared to act and you dared to accept the consequences. As your brother, I admired you. But now, you killed Clady, then you killed 6 special executors of the Radiant Church. Isn't this something you should be proud of? Why have you become like this? Reynolds was truly furious now. Next to him, George frowned. Third bro. George suddenly shouted at Linley. Reynolds and Yale both turned to look at George. Linley looked at him as well. "Third bro, why did you kill those 6 special executors?" George asked with a shout. George suddenly realized, even if Linley were to kill Clady, there was no reason for special executors of the Radiant Church to try and kill Linley. After all, Clady was no longer one of their kings. "They wanted to kill me," Linley said in a low voice. "Why did they want to kill you?" George had a feeling that he had touched upon the reason behind Linley's depression. "Because it was the Radiant Church who killed my mother," Linley said calmly. Standing next to Linley, both Yale and Reynolds were both surprised, but a flash of insight suddenly appeared within George's mind. He immediately roared, "The Radiant Church killed your mother? But you, third bro, aren't going to seek revenge? What, are you afraid? Not seek revenge?" Those 3 words seemed to have struck Linley like a lightning bolt. Right. It was the Radiant Church. Linley's dull eyes slowly began to sharpen. If it wasn't for the Radiant Church constantly searching for pure souls to offer to the Radiant Sovereign, then Clady wouldn't have given my mother to the Radiant Church, resulting in my mother's death. If it wasn't for my mother's death, my father wouldn't have died. If my father was alive, why would I go seek revenge? How could Grandpa Douring have died as a result? What's more, Grandpa Douring died as a result of helping me against those 6 special executors. Linley began to feel hatred in his heart. This was all due to the Radiant Church. Radiant, haha. The Radiant Church is radiant? If it was radiant, then why would they murder people with pure, innocent souls and offer them to the Radiant Sovereign? Linley's heart began to beat with hatred. The Radiant Temple's actions were really too vicious. Because of their viciousness, a series of tragedies had occurred, and his own life was one of those tragedies. "Boss." BB saw that Linley's face was growing firm. He was worried that Linley would be rash. He mentally said, "Boss, the last words that Grandpa Douring said to you were that he hoped you would live well." Linley's heart trembled. How could Linley forget the final words which Grandpa Douring had said just before his soul had dissipated? "BB, don't worry. I will never act rashly again. I will endure. The entity I will act against is the Radiant Church, rather than one specific individual. I know my own limits." Linley's eyes had grown firm and hard. Seeing the changes in Linley's eyes and expression, Yale, George, and Reynolds couldn't help but feel ecstatic. In recent days, Linley had always seemed so lost, so distant. He had never looked as resolved as he now did, and his eyes had never been so firm. "Boss Yale. Second bro, fourth bro. I've decided to leave." Linley made his decision. "Third bro, you, Yale and the others were surprised." "Don't worry. I'm fine." Linley laughed, giving each of his 3 brothers a punch to the chest. Yale and the others began to laugh as well. Seeing Linley like this, they felt much more relieved. Wearing a warrior's uniform, carrying the adamantine heavy sword on his back, and with BB on his shoulders, Linley left by himself. After leaving the chaotic city of Hesse, Linley headed towards the east. After half a day, Linley arrived at the border to the outer regions of the mountain range of magical beasts. Seeing the boundless mountain range of magical beasts, a hint of a smile appeared on Linley's face. "Radiant Church, just wait. There will come a day when I will pull you out by the roots." Linley's gaze was extremely firm. He lost his father. He had lost his mother. He had lost Grandpa Douring. The only one Linley could now rely on was himself. "Boss, are we going to cut through the mountain range of magical beasts?" BB was confused. Linley laughed, shaking his head. "No. First, we go to the core regions of the mountain range of magical beasts, and then we'll head straight north, until we reach the very end. That's a distance of 10,000 kilometers." BB was somewhat stunned. and the core regions have a lot of extremely powerful magical beasts. BB was absolutely shocked that Linley wanted to travel in the core region of the mountain range of magical beasts for 10,000 kilometers. If not, how shall I train? I haven't yet mastered the correct way to use the heavy sword. If I can't even master the heavy sword and use it properly, how will I deal with the Radiant Church? Linley immediately strode forward, entering the mountain range of magical beasts. And with this, Linley began the longest period of training in his entire life.